and subscribe. We're going live on the Saturday. I'm double checking some numbers. Something's going on in regards to my algorithm. Not sure what's going on. But I will be contacting YouTube again today. Well, contacting them for the first time. Something's also going on with a certain button I normally click, but for some odd reason, I don't know what's going on for me, and I have to double check. So, like the videos, you guys come in. Thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk About It Media 21. We talk hot topics, trending topics, what's going on in the news. About I appreciate everyone for being here and constantly supporting the channel. Just give me a few seconds as I get into the system to do my disclaimer. So thanks for tuning in. Let me go ahead and do my disclaimer as everyone follows in. Hopefully my numbers will do good for today. Let me do my disclaimer real quick. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 19. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarships and research. Fair use is use permitted by a copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All comments are alleged in our opinion and for entertainment purposes only. Just give me a few more seconds. Do my disclaimer. Uh, 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 um. Like the videos, you guys come in, then we'll get started pretty soon. Just give me a few more seconds. Like the videos, you guys come in, and thanks for being here. I hope everyone's having a happy morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Come on in. Like the video as you guys come in. Thanks for being here. Good morning, good morning. Like the videos you guys come in. Thanks for being here. And thanks for subscribing as well. Good morning, everyone. There we go. We're going to get straight to the video in regards to what's happening around the world, what's happening in the news. I appreciate everyone for being here. Please like the video. All right, so I got my disclaimers out of the way. Pin that. Let's go ahead and get straight to the videos. I hope everyone's having a good morning. I hope everything's going to be fine in regards to me going live today. Like the videos, you guys come in as I queue up the video. The first video we're going to talk about, is there a possibility that the government will shut down? Let's get into that.
Government through September, all except funding for the Department of Homeland Security. The House is not in session until Monday morning when they can vote on the Senate's legislation. DHS oversees immigration enforcement, and that includes ICE. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are insisting on changes to how ICE and Customs and Border Protection operate. House Speaker Mike Johnson says they will vote as early as Monday morning, and President Trump says he will sign the legislation right away. Here's NBC's Chief Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles.
Hey, Jessica, yes, the government is partially shut down. The first shutdown since the longest shutdown in American history last fall. But this situation is much different than the one that we dealt with just a couple of months ago. It is expected that the Congress will resolve this issue in the next couple of days when the House returns to session on Monday. This was all part of an effort by Democrats to try and force the Trump administration to change their mass deportation policy, specifically these roving ICE patrols across the country that led to the deaths of those two American citizens in Minneapolis. Democrats saying that they would not approve the Department of Homeland Security's funding plan without those reforms in place. That led to the White House and Democrats breaking up this appropriations package, which included 6 different appropriations bills, where the Democrats agreed that they would pass the 5 bills without the Department of Homeland Security, but then leave 2 additional weeks to attempt to try and negotiate those reforms. Now, at this point, it seems as though the House is willing to go along with this. When they come back on Monday, they're expected to vote this through. That means the vast majority of the government will be fully funded through the end of the fiscal year on Monday. The question still remain as to whether or not what happens with the Department of Homeland Security. They will have 2 weeks to come up with a new plan. Democrats are asking for things like body cams on ICE agents, proper identification, no more masks. They want a uniform code of conduct, and they want to end these roving ICE patrols. At this point, President Trump seems open to some level of reform, but he has had very differing views on this depending on when he's asked about it. So these next 2 weeks could be important. Keep in mind the Department of Homeland Security covers more than just ICE. It also includes FEMA, TSA, and many other important agencies that are under the Department of Homeland Security. So this will be a very important process that will play out over the next couple of weeks. But for right now, a partial government shutdown through at least Monday. Jessica, we'll send it back to you.
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. Like the video as you guys come in. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the channel. Let's continue with the news. Let's continue with the news.
Pages is significantly smaller than the total number of pages initially collected. That's why I mentioned a moment ago we're releasing more than 3 million pages today and not the 6 million pages that we collected.
This is Democracy Watch. Mark, that was the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche basically coming out and saying that as far as the Epstein files are concerned, they're not releasing the 6 million documents that we were told that existed, but instead they're just going to release 3 million documents, and somehow that should placate everybody. So first and foremost, can you give your reaction to this idea that there are 3 million fewer documents being released now than there were before?
I mean, this is a truly Orwellian performance, as you saw in the clip. Like, he's actually telling us, like, hey, everyone, really good news. You see, we could give you all the Epstein files by giving you 6 million pages. But really what we've done is give you 3 million files, 3 million pages, which is all the Epstein files. I mean, Brian, I'm going to make a prediction right now. There is no chance we have now seen the last of the Epstein files. I mean, let's just review the bidding. We were told a year ago, almost a year ago, like in a month or so, that, you know, volume 1 of the Epstein files were produced, right? And it was like this little notebook. Remember that?
Yeah, well, the binders that all these right-wing influencers were waving around.
Right, and that would lead you to believe that if that was volume 1, you know, maybe volume 2 might be, you know, a little bit bigger, right? So that we had that. Then we had, you know, Pam Bondi telling the FBI she wanted all of the files delivered to her office, and so they were going to have all the files in the spring. Then in July, we were told that they had searched every file cabinet and disk and everything, and they collected 300 gigabytes and that they had all the Epstein files. Then, you know, the legacy media, after the Congress passed this law, remember on December 19th, you know, when the 12,000 pages came out, the DOJ was like, well, we may have just a few more documents, you know, over the next couple of weeks. We're working really fast.
Yeah.
And then it turned out they said that was only 1%. Well, guess what? That was only 1% if there had only been 2 million records. Now it turns out there were 6 million. So it wasn't even 1%. It was a fraction and a fraction of 1%. So look, they're just rope-a-doping this. They are just, you know, pushing these documents out little by little, hoping that the legacy media will move on and say, good job, administration. You've done everything you were supposed to do. When you and I and everyone watching this video know it's just a load of bullshit.
To that end, I mean, the reality is that in terms of the distraction machine being fired up, we did see today, the same day that we got this announcement about the Epstein files, the Trump administration also decided to arrest Don Lemon. And so there's plenty of things that they're doing. Do you think that what we're seeing right now are efforts by the Trump administration to take our attention off of one thing and put it on another? And by the way, this is not to say that focusing on the arrest of a journalist is somehow just a distraction. I think that's too reductive. I think unto itself, that's just as important as everything else. But let's not delude ourselves into thinking that this administration doesn't still abide by this this Steve Bannon mentality of flooding the zone with shit.
Yeah, I actually think it's the reverse. So I think they really worry about the Epstein files because Donald Trump really cares about the Epstein files, right? Donald Trump doesn't care one way or the other what journalists he throws in jail.
Yeah.
Donald Trump doesn't care one way or the other what civil liberties he tramples on. He doesn't feel sorry or any normal empathy for people who are being, you know, beaten or pepper sprayed or killed, right? So for the people around him, it's, I think, the reverse of what you're suggesting. They are picking otherwise busy news days to drop the Epstein files so that the Epstein files don't dominate news, right? It's not to drown out the other stuff. It's to make sure that Donald Trump, as he's sitting there with the clicker, you know, scrolling through TiVo and old Fox and Friends segments, you know, he doesn't come across too much Epstein files because that's the thing that he really cares about. And by the way, Brian, let's be honest, it's the only thing that has really hurt him politically with his own base. And so I think they are looking for every opportunity to meter out Epstein files, bury it against otherwise busy news periods like the one we've been in, and hope that the legacy media just kind of moves on and says, well, it sounds like 3 million pages got released. That's a lot. And meanwhile, Todd Blanche is like, yeah, but there were 6 million, but we're giving you 3 million. And so that's really great.
Yeah. All right. So the big question here becomes, if there are 3 million secreted documents, hidden documents, suppressed documents, is there some way for members of Congress, survivors, the Epstein estate, whoever it may be, to compel the release of the remaining documents? Like, what avenues do we have at our disposal to make sure that we can actually gain access or gain visibility into the documents that are remaining? And I want you to answer that question in just a moment. But first, for anybody who's watching, if you'd like to support the invaluable work that Mark is doing, and he's covering the Epstein files extensively, along with every other threat to democracy and illegal or extrajudicial action or behavior this administration is taking, the best way to do that is to subscribe to Democracy Docket, which is the news outlet Mark founded to focus on everything voting, election, legal news. So I'm going to put that link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video, especially in this moment where legacy media is failing to meet the moment with the urgency that it deserves. This is the kind of independent media we should be supporting. All right, so Mark,
Let me answer your question. I think that I have been quite impressed by the work of Ro Khanna, Congressman from California, Robert Garcia, also Congressman from California, Tom Massey, very conservative Congressman from Kentucky.
Words I never thought I would hear you say, but yes.
Yeah, but let's be honest, Brian. The congressional effort to get these records has been pretty successful. Yeah. Like we wouldn't be where we are. As much as I don't think we ought to accept half measures. We would not be where we are without the work of those members of Congress, and I'm sure you've probably interviewed many others that you can add other names to. But I think that the answer to your question is we need those members of Congress to continue to push and push and push for a special master to look at those other 3 million records, for there to be additional congressional oversight and subpoenas, for challenging the redactions. We're still seeing a lot of records come through here that are heavily redacted. And there were limitations in the law on that. So I think right now the best hope we have is honestly keeping those members of Congress who have achieved this much focused on this.
Mark, what's your degree of confidence that we will see some type of successful legal effort to compel a special master? Or do you think the DOJ is going to be so vehemently opposed to this that even if Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey or the survivors bring some lawsuit to compel a special master, that we're still going to see the DOJ stand in the way?
Look, I think the best thing for people who want all the Epstein files to come out and for all the explanation to be given that Congress required in the law. They also required explanations of redactions. And to really put this to rest, what we need is to elect a Democratic Congress. Yeah. Right. Because and this is no disrespect to Thomas Massey. Like he has been, he has been straight up on this. But a Democratic Congress would be able to go to court as Congress and say, not, I'm Ro Khanna and I'm Thomas Massey, but like the House of Representatives itself saying we want this done, and that just puts them in a very different position. And right now, the Speaker is preventing the body itself, the institution itself, from taking action.
This might be a little bit in the weeds, but can you explain how Congress as an entity would have standing to bring a lawsuit? Because Congress in theory, if they're responsible for every federal law that's passed, and so in theory you could have Congress suing left and right for every law, but isn't it the people who the laws are created for who actually have harm in this scenario? So in this scenario, wouldn't it be more the survivors who actually have standing and not Congress, since yes, they created the law, but they created every law, and so how can they bring this to court?
Right. The reason why I think they'd have standing here, it's a really fair question, but the reason why I think they'd have standing here is that actually if you look at the law, what it says is that these records have to be released to Congress, to members of Congress. And so Congress is actually the one who is supposed to benefit in this.
Right, Congress is the beneficiary here.
From the records, right? Yeah. And so Congress would have standing under that theory. The other thing is, of course, Congress could just issue a subpoena that just calls for all these records, right, and then go to court to enforce the subpoena, right? So they kind of have a couple of different ways to get at this. That's not to say that there are not other private parties that could bring claims, and I encourage others to do so, but that's putting a lot of responsibility on the victims and others when, really the House of Representatives would be in a position to do this.
And to your point, it's not going to happen so long as Mike Johnson is Speaker of the House, because he would never dare issue a subpoena to the executive branch in that he views the legislative branch as merely some arm that's contracted all of its autonomy over to Trump.
Right. And this is the reason why we have a constitutional crisis right now. I mean, we have a constitutional crisis around a lot of things, including the fact that the executive branch, ignores court orders, including the fact that the president, bombed, ships or dropped, munitions on ships, and then took military action in Venezuela. The fact that the president has sent the National Guard into various cities, the fact that he's got a paramilitary force right now in Minneapolis and elsewhere. Like, we have a lot of instances of executive branch overreach.
Like the video. Good morning, everyone. Like the video as you guys come in. There's only one like. Please like the video as you guys come in. Good morning. Thanks for being here. Let's continue.
And violating the Constitution. And Congress is the entity that could stand up to them. But as you say, Mike Johnson's not going to do that. John Thune's not going to do that. And so if you want to rein in this lawless president, yes, the courts have to do their part. Yes, I am critical when they don't, and I praise them when they do. But honestly, our constitutional system was really set up to really have Congress be the check on the president, not the courts in the first instance. And as you say, under Republicans, that just is never going to take place. I would, by the way, strongly recommend, and maybe you could put a link here. You did a series with Jamie Raskin, who, in addition to being a very, very smart member of Congress, it was also a constitutional law professor. And I think people would be really well worth their time to spend some time watching those videos. I think it was a whole series watching those videos, because you really do get a very good overview of a lot of these issues.
I'm going to put a link to my channel, and you just scroll down to Class with Jamie Raskin. It's a whole, I think, 8 video series where he describes and explains constitutional law. He was a constitutional law professor at American University, and each of those episodes have at least like 1 or 1.5 million views, some as many as 4 million, because it's a free. If you've ever watched Jamie Raskin speak and wish that you could sit in the classroom and learn through him or by him, this is the way to do it.
Yeah, and people who who are not lawyers will come up to me and say, I really wish. I like the way, Mark, you talk, and I wish you would do like an online class about constitutional law. And like that isn't something I'm going to do.
True facts. I do feel that there is a lot of weird stuff going on in high places. I agree with that statement. You hear it in the artist world. You hear it in regards to what some of the actors went through. And then you're hearing it in regards to what's happening in high places. So concerning. And then this is the biggest thing. If these names are on these files, why haven't they yet been arrested? That's what I want to know. If this is released from the FBI, from the government, why aren't these people immediately arrested this weekend? Just like Don was arrested yesterday. Whether you agree, disagree, he should have asked the pastor, do you mind if I'm here to record, just in case if something happens? Do you mind if I'm here to record? And if the pastor says, no, I want you to leave, Don should have left. And I think Don should have asked the people, are we allowed to go look it up? You can easily Googled it and looked it up. But there's so much evilness going on. And then there's Hollywood, Hollyweird. They want to push a certain narrative. So let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. It's so concerning. There's so many concerning things. Why aren't these people in jail?
It's not anytime soon. But I always say, like, the fact is, Jamie Raskin was actually a constitutional law professor. Like, he has done the work of putting together syllabuses and these materials. And as you say, the numbers speak for themselves. The number of people who have watched those videos, myself included, and I've learned from watching those videos, but they are not geared. You don't need to go into them with a huge amount of expertise in the law. They're really geared towards everyone. So I encourage them. But, Brian, on the Epstein files, I mean, we're not going to get a straight answer from this White House. We need Democrats in Congress to do it. But in the meantime, like I said, I do want to give credit to the members of Congress on a bipartisan basis who have fought this White House to get as much as we get. It's laughable that Todd Blanche, plays this rope-a-dope game, but we are making slow and steady progress to getting all of those records.
Last question here. In terms of the practical reality of the moment that we're in right now, with Republicans in control, with the Mike Johnson and John Thune serving as mere extensions of Donald Trump, what would you want to see happen next to ensure more transparency on the Epstein files? What is the next step that you would like to see from Congress or any entity to get more transparency here?
Yeah, I think the next big fight is not actually over more records, because I strongly suspect that Blanche is just going to lower the hammer. I think he did this press conference to basically say, yeah, you may hear, to sort of pre-butt, like, yes, you may hear there were 6 million records, you got 3 million, that's what you're getting. Yeah, I think the next fight, the shark closest to the boat, so to speak, is over the redactions, because you can just imagine what has been redacted beyond that which has to be, which is obviously the victims' names. And I think if I were to make an ask of members of Congress, it would be to have their staffs get access to the unredacted files in some confidential setting and review whether or not there has been too much redaction, and also to hold the administration to the law, which requires them to explain in writing to Congress why things were redacted. And we have not seen those explanations. We are way past the deadline for that. And I think that is my next ask of members of Congress. And maybe the next time you talk to Ro Khanna, I doubt Tom Massey comes on your show, although that I would pay Brian to see you and Tom Massey do an episode together.
It's not for lack of trying. With that said, Mark, you have been doing excellent coverage of all of this. So again, highly recommend for anybody who's watching right now to get that coverage delivered straight to your inbox and to support the work that Mark is doing. Remember, Mark is litigating 80 cases across the country, including 24 cases where the only thing standing between the Trump administration gaining access to your private voter data and keeping that data secret at the state level, private at the state level, is Mark and his team. So a small step we can all take to support the invaluable work that they're doing is
like the video, fair use reaction clip. It's so concerning. And why isn't anybody talking about that these people will possibly go to jail? What are we talking about here? Some of these people should be jailed if what's being stated is true facts. It's so concerning. Yeah, okay, release more files, but when are these people going to jail? Let's continue. Fair use. Reaction clip.
Pages, 2,000 videos, and 180,000 images from the Jeffrey Epstein investigation released yesterday by the Justice Department. While Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche claimed the DOJ obligation under the Epstein Files Transparency Act was, quote, completed, yesterday's release only accounted for half of the 6 million pages he says the DOJ identified. Blanche adamantly defended the more than 40-day delay as necessary to protect the identities of Epstein's victims.
So the act had multiple requirements. Get it done in 30 days, and you better not release any victim information. All right, so there's a lot of statutory construction, there's a lot of case law that exists that says that if those two are conflict, we obviously are not violating the 30-day requirement by taking our time to comply with the act.
Yeah, my stock would be going down.
Like the video, like the video. Why isn't anybody talking about putting these people in jail? It's the same old, the same old. More documents need to be released. What about putting these people in jail? Okay, they got to redact, but put these people in jail.
Stock would be going down. And yet, DOJ has already appeared to fail in its obligation, as MS Now has identified that within the newly released documents, there were names and other identifying details of known survivors, including, in one instance, a driver's license with an unredacted photo that hadn't been previously produced in public court filings. Joining us now, MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin. Lisa, thank you for coming to the weekend. So the first question is the basic question. You've been digging through all of these files, or as many as you could, over the last 24 hours. What have you found so far?
I think, Jonathan, the most important thing that I and others at MS Now have seen is the sort of sloppiness pervasive across the document production with respect to the treatment of victim identifying information. You mentioned that driver's license. I am the person at MS Now who found the driver's license yesterday, and I literally gasped so loudly in my chair that others in the newsroom turned around. And it was because I saw a driver's license with a photo of a woman, completely unredacted, her name unredacted, and the only redactions that had been taken to that document were of her address. The fact that somebody had taken enough care to redact her address and yet left her face and her name alone, and this woman is a prominent survivor, it was galling to me that the department would be so careless. And unfortunately, that's just the tip of the iceberg. When you go through others of the documents, whether they are presentations compiled by the FBI, whether they are FBI 302s, which are witness statements, where a witness comes in and talks to the FBI and or DOJ and presents them with their narrative, these documents are suffuse with victim identifying information, including first names, last names, and other details that would allow folks who are familiar with the Epstein narrative to identify these people in the exact ways that Todd Blanche told the world yesterday was the justification for the department taking so long to produce these documents.
Lisa, one of the things that lawyers have been saying, reporters like you who cover the legal world have been saying, that we have been saying, and maybe hoping, is that these files would give a lot of context and give us a lot of information about these investigations that have been going on.
We want more than context. We want these people in jail. All the news is only talking about the files, the redaction. What about the arrest warrants? Is it just me? What about the arrest warrants? Are they just going to let these people pass and they're just going to keep talking about it? Where are the arrest warrants? I'm sorry. This is crazy. This is why people say that they don't really care for the news as much and they go to YouTube, because YouTube is going to say, where are the arrest warrants? Where's the arrest warrants? Okay, there's 60,000 files. They only gave us 30,000. Okay, but where's the arrest warrants? Sorry, what's going on?
Since they started looking into Jeffrey Epstein. But I have not looked through all 3 million pages. You have not either. Everyone's looking at different.
And if there are no warrants, that's even sadder situation, because the news is only focusing on, we didn't get so much like we thought we were going to get. Why aren't they talking about that? It's crazy to me, because if everyday people, if they do this, they would be arrested. Why aren't these higher up political people being arrested, and artists and celebrities being arrested?
But I have not seen any reporting anywhere about notes from investigators as they were talking, as they were looking into things.
Nobody trusts them. This is the bigger issue, that the news is not even asking what happens next. Why won't they arrest these people.
We haven't seen it. It doesn't appear any transcripts from interviews from survivors that are in this. Where's that information? Because this seems to be, according to Todd Blanchard, Deputy Attorney General, the last batch that we're getting.
Well, look, Eugene, I have seen examples of both of those things, but how prevalent they are in the totality.
Stay in my lane. You need to stay in yours and go on your page and talk about what you want to talk about. The fact of the matter is, it's sad that nobody's talking about what's the next step in getting these people put in jail. You stay in your lane. Go to your page.
Of the production remains to be seen. And right now, at this juncture, less than 24 hours in, I would tell you that I don't see a lot of examples of either of those things. That having been said, it's not an accident that the department released 3 million pages all at once, particularly after, in the rush to meet that December deadline, they were trickling out documents. So one of the questions I have is, why didn't they roll these out in waves? Could they have more carefully attended to victim privacy and satiated the public demand for these documents? Certainly, at this point, they are more than 6 weeks late. Could they have done that in a more responsible way? But I want to go back to your question about investigator notes and memos, because the ones that I have seen are absolutely heartbreaking. I saw yesterday handwritten notes and then the corresponding typed up interview pertaining to a particular survivor yesterday. And at the end of the interview, the survivor, after detailing her history with both Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, tells the investigators Ghislaine Maxwell is, and this was her word, sociopathic, and I fear for myself if she is not convicted. And that really stayed with me overnight, because we live in a universe where Ghislaine Maxwell now, as we all know, is at a federal prison camp where the possibility of her getting a pardon isn't necessarily one that the president has closed off. And then I think about that woman and her fear that the sociopathic Ghislaine Maxwell will come and hurt her, or others will hurt her in a world where Ghislaine Maxwell isn't accountable for her crimes. That's a universe that we're living in right now. That's not the past. That is the here and now for many of these survivors.
That's the other sad part. She was relocated to a different jail. That's the other sad part.
If I can, I want to read you a statement that I got yesterday from Brittany Henderson. Brittany and her partner, Brad Edwards, are two of the most prominent attorneys for Epstein survivors. They represent a whole panoply of them. And I asked them about this failure to protect victims yesterday, and here's part of what she said. What the Department of Justice has done is devastating and disgusting. Through this final release of documents, the department has flagrantly violated the trust, privacy, and the rights of more victims than perhaps ever before. There are not words to express the disappointment. Eugene?
Lisa, we don't have that much time left, but I do want to ask you about this very notable document that was released, which is the draft indictment that people have been waiting for a very long time now. The 32-count, 56-page indictment that was crafted by federal prosecutors in 2007, but was ultimately shelved. In this document, it laid out sex trafficking and enticement of minors. Can you explain to us the significance of this, and also remind our viewers, why was this never filed?
Yeah, it was never filed because the Department of Justice, and specifically the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, Alex Acosta, who then became the Labor Secretary under Donald Trump, decided that it was not in the interest of justice for the indictment to be filed, and he signed what's called a non-prosecution agreement with Jeffrey Epstein, where the feds agreed that they would not prosecute him despite having grounds to do so. He then pled guilty to a single prostitution count in state court that was part of this non-prosecution agreement, and served only a matter of months in a state prison where he also had leave during the day and go to his place of work. I think the significance of it, Jackie, is it shows those that 32 counts. Each of them stand for a person. And one of the other things we see in this production are emails from the lead prosecutor at the time, literally begging Alex Acosta and another supervisor in the office to let her file the indictment when Jeffrey Epstein and his lawyers were trying to get out of that non-prosecution agreement, but also telling them, come sit, come watch these women in their interviews, watch them break down, watch their devastation, and then tell me that what we're doing is just.
Lisa Rudman, thank you so much, and I know you'll continue to look into all of these pages and bring us things as they come.
Like the video, fair use reaction clip.
Julie.
Like the video as you guys come in. Next clip. Like the video as you guys come in.
Everyday requirement by taking our time to comply with the act.
Yeah, my stock would be going down. And yet, DOJ has already appeared to fail in its obligation, as MS Now has identified that within the newly released documents, there were named other identifying details of known survivors, including, in one instance, a driver's license with an unredacted photo that hadn't been previously produced in public court filings. Joining us now, MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin. Lisa, thank you for coming to the weekend. So the first question is the basic question. You've been digging through all of these files, or as many as you could, over the last 24 hours. What have you found so far?
I think, Jonathan, the most important thing that I and others at MS Now have seen is the sort of sloppiness pervasive across the document production with respect to the treatment of victim identifying information. You mentioned that driver's license. I am the person at MS Now who found the driver's license yesterday, and I literally gasped so loudly in my chair that others in the newsroom turned around. And it was because I saw a driver's license with a photo of a woman, completely unredacted, her name unredacted, and the only redactions that had been taken to that document were of her address. The fact that somebody had taken enough care to redact her address
Let's
and yet
continue.
left her face and her name alone, and this woman is a prominent survivor, it was galling to me that the department would be so careless. And unfortunately, that's just the tip of the iceberg. When you go through others of the documents, whether they are presentations compiled by the FBI, whether they are FBI 302s, which are witness statements, where a witness comes in and talks to the FBI and or DOJ and presents them with their narrative, these documents are suffuse with victim identifying information, including
3,200 documents that mention Donald Trump specifically. That he wasn't in the Epstein file? Yeah, that number will grow, I assume, over time. There's a really bizarre document where the FBI had assembled a summary of tips about Trump and Epstein. It's all uncorroborated, or at least we don't have any evidence to back anything up, so we're not going to get into the specifics. But it's not clear why they would do that. Right. Like, who is this for? I guess if you call the FBI with a tip, it probably just gets memorialized, right? Yeah, but who are they rounding them up for? Like, is this going to the White House? Is this going to him personally, right? So I think that's a big question. And then also for Trump, there's a document worth mentioning called a 302, which is like the standard form the FBI uses to document an interview with a witness or somebody. It's like, who, what, when, where, and then notes on the conversation, but not verbatim. One Epstein victim says Ghislaine Maxwell, quote, presented her to Donald Trump. Now, it says nothing happened with Trump, but the mere fact that Ghislaine Maxwell would take someone they were abusing and present them to Donald Trump, I think, suggests something pretty damning in my book. I think anytime you're being presented women by a third party, and they use the word like in any context, yeah, it's a little sketchy. Well, this is the way the woman described the way she was being treated. Again, we know this is sort of a pattern of serial abuse by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and the friends. And again, it also hammers home that Ghislaine Maxwell, she is an abuser. She's not like some sort of innocent bystander here. There's a bunch of emails going back and forth between Elon Musk and Jeffrey Epstein. Elon Musk, by the way, who said Jeffrey Epstein invited me to the island once and I refused. Yeah. Seems like that's not true. Yeah. Elon's a breakout star of the Epstein files this time. So there's an email where Elon is planning to visit Epstein Island. And again, these emails are all between 2012 and 2014. Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to the first round of abuse allegations in June of 2008. So this is years and years after he should have known better. Also, we should just point out that Donald Trump claims that he broke off ties with Jeffrey Epstein in 2006. Right. And there's another email in there that suggests Epstein was going to go to Mar-a-Lago in 2012. But as you mentioned, Elon says, Epstein tried to invite me to his island. I refused. But the email from November 25th, 2012, Elon emails Epstein, what day/night will be the wildest party on your island? ? Sounds like someone who was ready to refuse. It doesn't sound like a man who's going to look for financial advice or a conversation about the future of the tech industry. Right? Like that's a guy who knows what Jeffrey Epstein does, the vibe on the island, and wants to go there. Yeah. And Jeffrey Epstein, I think, says, I'll send a heli for you, send him a helicopter. Which is just, no one's ever sent a heli for me. No one's ever sent a heli. But we should say that, these have all been released. Elon is just tweeting about Grok and AI just all today. Mm-hmm. So he's seeing all these tweets. He knows this is happening. He's tweeting through it. And it does make, again, like, remember when Elon had his break with Trump, it seems like they patched things up. His final kind of coup de grace tweet was, Donald Trump hasn't released the Epstein files because he's in them. Well, takes one to know one. Takes one to know one, big time. Speaking of takes one to know one, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, Nutlick as others call him, is in there too. So this document, they suggest that Lutnick visited Epstein Island in 2012. Again, 4 years after. Maybe he went to the wild party night that Elon didn't get to go to. That's a good call. But Lutnick, remember, he previously claimed he had cut ties with Epstein in 2005. Remember, he was doing an interview, I forget, it was televised. He said, Epstein invited him to a tour of his mansion in the Upper East Side that was next door to his house. They noticed a massage table in the middle of the room, and Epstein explained that he received, quote, the right kind of massages every day, and Lutnick said that he and his wife left. They decided, quote, never be in a room with that disgusting person ever again. So I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross. This is what he told Pod Force One, the New York Post podcast. But he went to the island, it sounds like. It's weird that these people don't tell the truth. What?
There's something, you can just see it memorialized like this.
There's something pathological, though, about making up a very specific
right, as opposed to saying,
like,
no, I never went.
Right.
Just leave it at that.
Right.
Like, you have to, that's what they're, because they just don't care.
He made himself like the hero of the story.
It's like Elon, right?
Yeah.
Like, you could just say, no, I never went, as opposed to saying, I refuse to go.
Right.
Like, they always have to go extra and make them, like, Donald Trump was the hero. Donald Trump was blowing the whistle on Epstein, right? Remember that was one of the excuses too?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, and also, Epstein gave money to a charity dinner honoring Lutnick in 17. In 18, they exchanged emails about some other charitable things. Like, these guys were friends forever.
Like, all these people were.
One of the weirdest things in this set of documents is about Bill Gates. So this is an email I think Jeffrey Epstein sent to himself, and it reads like a draft. It reads like he's sending himself a draft of an email that he wants to send to Bill Gates, or he's just memorializing something that he wants to exist and be embarrassing. So it's lots of bitching and moaning about Gates having like his PR guy dump Epstein as a friend, dumps him as a client. But then at the end, there's this. It says Gates said something to him like, please delete the emails regarding your STD, your request that I provide you antibiotics that you can surreptitiously give Melinda, his then wife, and the description of your penis. So the suggestion is that Mr. Gates needed, drugs to treat STDs that he got from sex with Russian women that had been facilitated by Jeffrey Epstein.
I will say, that is, reading the way that Jeffrey Epstein wrote that in an email to himself, it doesn't feel like something that you would, if he was actually sending an email to like, it just seems a little off.
It's weird. It is, he like really swerves
to
get to this place. I'm not defending Bill Gates. I don't know anything. Bill Gates.
But it's also like, do you think, like, is Bill Gates looking for STD medication from Jeffrey Epstein? Is that his go-to source for the richest man in the world needs some STD medication? He's like, I got to go to Jeffrey Epstein for it.
Probably knows some doctors. That's a fair point. So again, Gates denied this to Business Insider, probably other outlets. We don't know the truth. It's really weird. It's the whole thing's just fucking. All of this is weird. Like, that's the story of this whole thing. It's so gross and uncomfortable. Richard Branson's in there, the founder of the Virgin Group. There's an email from Branson in 2013 that says, it was really nice seeing you yesterday. Anytime you're in the area, would love to see you, as long as you bring your harem.
Pod Save America is brought to you by Cook Unity. I've been using Cook Unity.
How is this person not impeached? How are these people not in jail?
It's like protein forward, better for sleep, mood boosting, and
let's continue.
Chest behind Cook Unity. Go to Cook Unity. Behind the Epstein files, because there's all these secrets. It's all like hiding in plain sight.
Yeah.
Like all of these emails, just like they all were talking about it in the open on the emails. It didn't, like, when it gets down to it, they were very open about it.
Yeah, the FBI didn't need to do a real deep investigation.
Right.
It access to like one inbox and they found all this stuff.
They weren't trying too hard to hide the sketchiness.
Yeah, and it's like, again, it's all really rich and powerful people. Like Epstein outed women for Steve Tisch, who is the New York Giants co-owner. There's emails of them kind of like talking about whether certain individuals are professionals or civilians. Here's one of the weirdest things, John. There's Epstein emails a Russian guy he knows saying he needs a favor because a, quote, Russian girl from Moscow is attempting to, quote, blackmail a group of powerful businessmen in New York. And he says, quote, it's bad business for everyone involved. And then he provides this guy her physical address.
Jesus Christ.
Like where she's staying in New York. And the Russian is reportedly a former Russian economic minister with ties to Russian intelligence. Now, I haven't confirmed that for myself. Again, we're all learning this in real time. But that is like, that's just like scary. Yeah, it's like putting this person in physical harm. Like, what's the plan? Is he going to go to the room?
Scare her, do something worse? Yeah, that's bad.
There's an email to Ghislaine Maxwell. There's an email, I think, that maybe Melania might have written to Ghislaine Maxwell complimenting her
2002.
On an article. So again, like, this was sort of the height of when Epstein and Trump were buddies. Now again, Democrats are not saved here. Like, our former colleague Kathy Rumler is all over these files, sending really flattering emails to Jeffrey Epstein that are weird and uncomfortable. Ghislaine Maxwell has a note to Bill Clinton that references his penis. Not going to get into more detail.
Hung like a horse.
Yeah, there's that. That's what it says. So holy shit. So again, these documents were released way too late. It's probably not all of them. Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, said earlier today that 200,000 pages were redacted or withheld. But it feels like
it seems like that's the end too.
Yeah,
like they're not releasing anything else.
Yeah, I think Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, the authors of the legislation that forced this document dump, say they want to go review the unredacted files and make sure that everything they think should be in the public domain is.
Yeah.
So I imagine that'll take some time. It'll take some time for journalists to go through this thing. I imagine congressional investigators are like highly focused on this. But I mean, it's as bad as you think it would be.
And with all those mentions of Trump, I'm sure that it'll take a couple days for everyone to parse through all of it.
Yeah. So that's it for this. We'll do another update when we learn more. Thank you for watching this episode of Pod Save America. You're on YouTube. Please subscribe.
Where are the arrest warrants? # where are the arrest warrants?
Today, the Trump Justice Department released more than 3 million pages of documents from the Epstein files, which seems like a lot of documents, but it's reportedly only half of what the Justice Department actually has.
Donald Trump and the Department of Justice just made it clear right now that they intend to withhold approximately 50% or half of the Epstein files while claiming to have fully complied with the law. This is outrageous and incredibly concerning.
I know this person's not calling me a dummy. Be kind in the comments. Be kind in the comments. You will be removed. Be kind in the comments. Unless they're talking to somebody else. We don't do disrespect over here.
Now, the Oversight Committee subpoena, which we have had in place now since the summer, had directed the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and the Department of Justice to release all the files to our committee, of course, while also protecting our survivors. They are now in violation of that law.
Now, the two lawmakers who worked tirelessly with survivors to pass that Epstein Files Transparency Act, the Democrat Ro Khanna and the Republican Thomas Massie, sent this letter to Todd Blanche tonight, the Deputy Attorney General, with demands for the specific material that they say the Trump DOJ has refused to release. Quote, as the bipartisan lead sponsors of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, we write to formally request access to unredacted documents of the Jeffrey Epstein files, given ongoing reported concerns regarding the scope and consistency of redactions in the documents released to date. We respectfully request a meeting to review the unredacted record. In particular, we seek access to the following categories of materials. First, hundreds of thousands of pages of emails and other documents recovered from Jeffrey Epstein's email account during the 2018 and 2019 investigations into Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Secondly, victim interview statements from the initial Florida investigation and subsequent investigations in New York. We understand that the department possesses FBI Form 302 reports documenting interviews. However, the materials released to date in this category consist largely of pages that are fully redacted, providing no meaningful information for oversight or public accountability. Third, the 53-page draft indictment and the 82-page prosecution memorandum prepared during the 2007 Florida investigation. These documents are essential to understanding the government's knowledge of Epstein's criminal conduct and the circumstances surrounding the non-prosecution agreement and immunity that he received. End quote. All right, joining us now to make sense of all this, MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin. Lisa, I want to start by saying that the Attorney General, formerly Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, says you got everything. All you don't have is stuff that was redacted because of protection of the identity of victims.
Yes, and he also said earlier today that one of the things that the Department of Justice had withheld entirely were things that had privileges attached to them. Things including attorney-client privilege, work product protection, and something known as deliberative process privilege. Put in layman's terms, that means internal deliberations of the Department of Justice. He also said during a point in his press conference that in addition to the 3 million documents that they dumped on us today, oh, guess what? There are another 3 million of them that they didn't produce.
Right.
So not everything that they withheld was for the privacy and safety of victims. In fact, we know that, Allie, because one of the things that characterizes their production today is a sort of rampant sloppiness with respect to actually protecting that information. And to that, if I can, I'd like to read a statement that I received tonight from the victim's lawyer. I noticed today I counted almost 20 victims' names that I personally recognized just in the cursory review that I've done so far. I also saw the driver's license of a particular victim that I recognized with her face and her name fully visible. That is contrary to the promises that Deputy Attorney General Blanche made today. So I contacted a lawyer and I asked what her thoughts were on this. And this is the statement I got from Brittany Henderson, who is the partner of Brad Edwards. Together, they represent quite a large assortment of Epstein survivors. She wrote, what the Department of Justice has done today is devastating and disgusting. Through this final release of documents, the department has flagrantly violated the trust, privacy, and the rights of more victims than perhaps ever before.
Wow.
The department has been in possession of a comprehensive list of victims of Jeffrey Epstein for months. In that time, they have spoken directly with several terrified women who they promised to protect through a fulsome redaction.
Hashtag, where are the arrest warrants? Hashtag, where are the arrest warrants? I'm sure the victims want justice.
Process. Their complete and utter failure to do so is heartbreaking. There are not words to express the disappointment. And again, that's a statement attributable to Brittany Henderson, one of the lawyers who represents some of the most outspoken Epstein survivors who have advocated for not only the passage of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, but have repeatedly pressed for compliance with the act, compliance that we really didn't see today in a variety of ways.
And by the way, this idea of protecting the survivors is important across the law as a legal principle. But in this particular case, these are survivors who are saying that there are some remarkably wealthy and powerful people who might be implicated in this thing. For them to inadvertently have their names, some of them have gone public, but for them to willy-nilly have their names out there, it's a substantial threat. It's not an abstraction.
No, it's not an abstraction at all. And I read today, you read from that letter from Congressman Khanna and Massey, where they were asking for the department to produce what are called FBI 302s. That is the form that the FBI types up victim statements into. And they are right, there aren't a lot of them there. But which ones are there? I saw one today where at the very end of it, this was from a 2021 interview of a survivor. The last thing she said was, Ghislaine Maxwell is sociopathic, and I fear for myself if she is not convicted. So there are legitimate fears.
Epstein and Ghislaine, why were they the only ones that was arrested at that time, y'all? Why were they the only ones arrested? The government has known all these things. They shouldn't have been just the only ones arrested. What are we talking about? What is going on with this world? Why were they the only ones arrested? This is crazy. If they knew the names a long time ago, then he's being released to go to do his job. That's crazy in itself. Why weren't these names and these people arrested a long time ago? And where are the arrest warrants now? This is crazy. It's just all talk, but no movement in regards to protecting the victims of what they went through for years. This is ludicrous.
On behalf of many of these survivors, not just about the people we do know about, but with respect to others that we don't as well.
Help me out with the stuff that we've heard from Robert Garcia and from Thomas Massey and from Ro Khanna about what's not there. How do they know what's not there?
Well, I think there are ways to search this, right? So DOJ was compelled by law not only to produce to the public, but to do so in a way that was text searchable to all of us. So you can enter lots of words in this search and come up with documents. If you're looking, for example, for that prosecution memo or that draft indictment, two of the things that are most important to Massey and Khanna, and frankly to me as well, you can see whether they are there if they come up in a search. One of the ways also that I knew that they were so sloppy with their redactions is because I looked for the names of particular victims and I found them. So it's not that we've done a thorough boil the ocean review of the 3 million pages we've seen so far, but that there are ways of searching these documents. And of course, there are lots of people looking at them. If you look at Twitter today, the assortment of various media outlets that are looking at these and collectively sort of finding bits and pieces here and there, you can compose sort of an aggregate picture, at least initially, of what people consider to be the hottest documents and also the most egregious absences.
So where are we now? Because Todd Blanche has basically said, he stated reasons why, but he said we've fulfilled our requirements under the Transparency Act. Ro Khanna, Thomas Massey, Robert Garcia say otherwise. What happens now? We saw the letter that Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey have written.
Yes, what happens now? And they'll probably still be talking about, we want more documents released. What about putting these people in prison? They should have been in prison with this guy a long time ago.
Todd Blanche, but what happens here? Because Todd Blanche has said he wasn't equivocating about this. He said you largely got what you're going to get.
Well, there are two things. One is they haven't gotten everything that they're entitled to because under the law, they have a legal obligation, they meaning the Department of Justice, to produce a report within 15 days to Congress that talks about the categories of documents that have been withheld, the categories of redactions, the reasons they've redacted documents, and they're also supposed to provide a list of all significant people that appear in it, including government officials. So that information still needs to be delivered to Congress. With respect to what comes next, though, I think what you're driving at is what remedy is there for Congress to the extent that there has been a lack of compliance here. And here's where I wish that Robert Garcia and Ro Khanna were with us right now, because I put that question to them. Where I read the law, I don't see a legal remedy for Congress to sue, for example, for better
the main thing for people to realize, you got to go to the legal pages that's pulling these documents. They're talking about what happened. People being pulled from their homes, people being touched. That's who should be arrested. Go to the legal pages and listen to the redacted documents and hear what's being said and done to these victims. It's sickening that nobody's talking about arresting. So some people may not know. Of course, names are dropped, but there's legal pages that's talking about what happened to these victims. So these people should have been arrested a long time ago.
Compliance or enforcement with the Epstein Act.
So notwithstanding the fact that Congress overwhelmingly voted for this Epstein Act, the power of a bipartisan unified Congress isn't enough to overcome the Department of Justice not doing what you evaluate they're supposed to have been doing?
Well, I mean, I think one of the questions is, does Congress want to hold anybody in contempt for failure to comply? They could refer somebody to, guess what, the same Department of Justice that they're accusing of noncompliance. But from a legal perspective, let's say they wanted to bring a lawsuit. One of the challenges is this really fundamental legal concept called standing. It's who has the ability to. And over again, courts have found that individual members of Congress, even sometimes whole committees, don't have the right to stand in the shoes of the entire Congress to sue, to vindicate rights that belong to them as an institution. So unless the Speaker of the House and the majority leader of the Senate want to convene some sort of resolution where both bodies vote to sue, there likely would not be standing, which is like one of the most elemental things you need to sustain a lawsuit in the first place.
Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. Let's continue. That's my biggest question. Like the video as you guys come in.
Michigan auto law.
Like the video as you guys come in. Fair use reaction clip.
Here at the family table with what we know so far, that's an important element so far about this new batch of Epstein files.
And it's early on a Friday. There could be a few more system stresses before the end of the day.
We certainly know that to be true, Ed.
Yeah, we do.
What can you tell us?
There's a lot there. About another 3 million documents, 2,000 videos, 180,000 images, give or take. A lot more information about the kind
There's videos, there's images.
of allegations that were made against President Trump or then businessman Trump back in the day when he knew Epstein. Lots of new information about the kinds of communications that Epstein had at one time or another with Bill Gates, with Elon Musk, evidence of associations with people like the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick years after he said he didn't talk to his old neighbor anymore because he thought he was a creep. And essentially, much more information from the notebooks of FBI and Justice Department officials who had been investigating the various elements of this for years. And found all sorts of allegations that had to be looked into, found all sorts of email, found all sorts of pictures of his house, and other pornographic images, the Deputy Attorney General said, although I don't know that we've discovered any of those yet in our ongoing review. And to your point about it being chaotic, it literally was just published this morning to the Justice Department website with no rhyme or reason. Here it all is, you figure it out. And other government agencies have done this at times when they want to say that they've released the information but not give you some sense of a roadmap. The Deputy Attorney General was asked for one and wouldn't provide one to reporters when they asked, is there something in here we should be looking for or looking to highlight? And in essence, what he said was, we've done our job. We fulfilled the law. You go figure it out. And they tell us they've only withheld about 200,000 documents for various reasons. Democrats on Capitol Hill, survivors, and the lawyers that work with them believe there could be much more that for whatever reason is being withheld.
And is it our understanding, Ed, and you implied this a moment ago, and I believe there was a statement placed on X by the Attorney General, this is it. They're not providing any more information.
They say that they have fulfilled their obligation to the law. Now, they're 42 days late in doing so.
Point one.
But they say that based on their assessment of everything they've found, they've done everything they need to do. They've withheld about 200,000 documents for various privileges, which means there's classified information or about people who were involved in this, other things that may be active that we just don't know about amid the 3 million plus that they released today.
Ed O'Keefe, always a pleasure, sir. Thank you very much. Joining me now, Barry Levine. He has covered Jeffrey Epstein for years and is the author of The Spider, Inside the Tangled Web of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Barry, I'm always glad to have you with us. As Ed and I just said, there's so much to try to get through. You haven't gotten through it all. We haven't gotten through it all. I don't believe any human on planet Earth has gotten through it all this afternoon. Any initial impressions you have to share with my audience this afternoon?
Well, Major, I will say that it's a mountain. It's a monumental task to begin unraveling these documents. And it may take not only days, but weeks, months, and probably years until we really get true answers. Again, I'm thinking of the survivors. I'm thinking about these women who want the answers, and they want accountability. They want to know, as Representative Thomas Massie said, that there were 20 men who took part in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking, according to FBI 302 witness reports. Now, that, to me, is crucial in terms of understanding this. Who are these men? And what actions did the Department of Justice and the FBI take to corroborate the accounts of survivors about these men? And then I have to add, there's a big wrinkle to this. Just the other day, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, who is serving 20 years behind bars, issued in legal documents stating that there were P5 men who she claimed received settlements with the government into allegations related to Jeffrey Epstein. So we need to dig through these files. We need to find accountability, and we need to find, finally, why has the Department of Justice not prosecuted other individuals besides Ghislaine Maxwell? And if not...
Facts. Finally, someone's talking about getting justice and someone else being arrested other than Epstein and Maxwell. Finally.
Were some very wealthy and powerful men given privileges of escaping this.
Barry, I'm really glad you brought up that legal document submitted by attorneys on behalf of Ghislaine Maxwell. It was a habeas petition. and it said that those were secret settlements. And the point of that habeas petition was to say to the court, if all these other people implicated in these crimes were able to reach secret settlements, why was I alone prosecuted? Now, anyone who's in prison puts a habeas petition forward to try to get their release. There are all sorts of motives behind that, but that is...
So you're telling me that there's secret settlements. What does that mean? They paid off not to go to jail?
Statement that someone's going to have to evaluate against these documents, right?
That's correct. I mean, this is a really sensational bombshell that came out from her lawyers. Now, she herself, of course, has been accused of perjury by the government before her prosecution. But the fact remains that if there is documented material that relates to settlements involving powerful individuals related to this case, that would completely blow away everything we know about the investigation so far.
And Barry, for the attorneys who represent the survivors/victims, they can go through this. They will have time and effort to do that. There could be reputational harm, but what they're after is not just reputational harm, but some thread of prosecutorial action that could hold others to account, correct?
Facts. Thank you. Finally, a news station that's talking the legal jargon and what should happen in regards to arrest warrants.
That is absolutely correct, Major. And that's why getting to the heart of this is so important. And it's not only the men who we know, but there were others who took part in this. Virginia Giuffre, who was passed on, who was Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's primary and most vocal accuser, detailed interactions that she was forced to be involved with upwards of a dozen men. Okay, so we know that, and we've known this for a number of years. And then, of course, Thomas Massie, the representative who, with Ro Khanna, really spearheaded the Epstein files to get that Transparency Act. He said that there were 20 men, that there was more than a dozen, that there were 20 men. And now Ghislaine Maxwell herself, her lawyers are saying there's probably 25 who may have been involved here. So it is important for these survivors, for the sake of healing, to be able to move forward, is to finally get down to the bottom of this. We've waited years in this particular case, and the government has put us through a grueling 6 months of waiting while this had been politicized, that we're finally seeing actual documents. And I know that there's 200,000 pages that we won't see, that they say are privileged, but we're going to dig into the other material. And thus far, I have not myself been able to find references to those 20 men that Representative Massie had talked about. There's a lot of other material there related to friends of Jeffrey Epstein and very disturbing photos, and the internet is already filled, a cesspool of information related to uncorroborated claims about individuals connected to Epstein. But we really need to get to the heart of this.
And we will continue that effort, and we will rely on you to help us in that pursuit. Barry Levine, thank you very much.
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. Please like the video as you guys come in, and thank you.
Peter Baker, Chief White House Correspondent for the New York Times and an MS Now contributor, and Dave Ehrenberg, former state attorney for Palm Beach County. Fallon, let's start with you. What else did we hear from Blanche? And I know we're still combing through this trove of documents.
Yeah, Ariel, we learned a significant amount of information during this press conference, but the biggest headline is that the Department of Justice believes that they have met their obligation and that their work is complete under the Epstein Transparency Act, that this new drop of 3 million documents is everything that they feel that they need to deliver. There is one caveat. They said that there could be a small amount of documents that we could get. They are working with the Southern District of New York, asking a judge to unseal the grand jury material related to the 2019 investigation and eventual indictment against Ghislaine Maxwell. But there are a number of headlines here. The biggest thing is that Todd Blanche is saying that there is no super secret tranche of additional documents, that this is everything. They said that any claims that the DOJ is working to protect the president is not true. We know that in this new trove of documents, which we are still reviewing, there are a number of them, is that they have decided to redact every single woman. This is a departure from something that we saw in the first trove of documents. There were women who were apparently not victims, who were not redacted. They then, you'll remember, there were some mistakes. They had to go back and remove some documents because they needed to redact them because there were concerns that they were releasing identities of victims. So this time they've decided to just redact everybody. And the one really notable thing there is that they are also redacting men if the men's presence in a photo or a video or anything otherwise makes it impossible to redact the identity of the woman. And so there is a possibility that we could see some men redacted in this new drop. But we also know that Todd Blanche is saying that there are probably not any new men who would be convicted of wrongdoing here.
and that if they do discover any, they would, of course, prosecute them. But again, we are still going through these documents. It is a very large volume of documents, 3 million. This will take our team some time, but as soon as we have...
Now, what'd she say?
So there is a possibility that we could see some men redacted in this new drop. But we also know that Todd Blanche is saying that there are probably not any new men who would be convicted of wrongdoing here, and that if they do discover any, they would...
Why not? That's crazy.
Of course, prosecute them. But again, we are still going through these documents. It is a very large volume of documents, 3 million. This will take our team some time, but as soon as we have anything reportable, we'll bring it right to you. Ariel?
Thanks so much, Fallon. I know you'll stick around for that. Lisa, we now have our senior legal reporter, Lisa Rubin, with us. Lisa, Blanche was adamant, as Fallon mentioned, that the DOJ is not protecting President Trump. I don't know if we have the sound that we can play there of him talking about this. You have it?
Hold on one second. Like the
Okay,
video.
in the meantime, it was okay. We have it.
Anybody. I mean, I think that there's a hunger or a thirst for information that I do not think will be satisfied by the review of these documents.
So essentially alluding to the fact that no matter what's released at this point, it's not going to satiate those out there that just want to see names, they want to see photos, they want to see all of this. What do you make of Blanche's comments, specifically when it comes to the president?
No, they want them to be arrested. What is happening here? No, they should be in jail. All of them.
And what we may or may not see here.
I don't think that's a fair comment, and I'm going to try and be measured in my words, Ariel, because as I was discussing during our last hour with Ana Cabrera, the very existence of the Epstein Files Transparency Act is a product of a reversal by the Department of Justice. Trump came into office aligned with a whole movement of people that believed that there was a massive conspiracy around Jeffrey Epstein and the suppression of evidence and information about his sex trafficking ring. And they encouraged those voices. They told those voices that they...
Be kind in the comments. I don't know why people would say something weird like that. Be kind in the comments. Be kind.
Be listened to, and they promised that files related to released. And indeed, when they came into office, they initiated a process of reviewing these documents. They brought in people from the FBI and people from the National Security Division at the Department of Justice. We know this because multiple publications reported on this rampantly throughout the spring. And then sometime in or around May, Deputy Attorney General Blanche and others told the president about instances in which his name had come up and those of people close to him had come up. And somehow that resulted in a memo in July of last year where the FBI and the Department of Justice essentially told us there's nothing more to see here. We don't believe it's in the public interest for us to release anymore. Somehow in Mr. Blanche's mind, that's transmogrified into a we were legally not able to release anymore until the Epstein Files Transparency Act was put into place. That's also not true. They did need judicial permission to release some small modicum of what we're going to see, things that were grand jury materials or otherwise produced in discovery in the 2 criminal cases. But other than that, this is a situation largely of this administration's own making and a miscalculation politically by them of the hunger that they themselves stoked for more information about Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and the sex trafficking ring. I did find that relatively notable that Blanche seemed almost annoyed that this topic had come to the forefront during this press conference and when he was pressed on it, and that it, just like you're saying, this came from members of the president's own orbit, from podcasters and the like. Yeah, his peak was particularly upsetting to watch because it came out in response to a question about the survivors' frustration. And Mr. Blanche seemed to say, I am just as frustrated as they are, almost justifying that he was more frustrated with more of a right to be frustrated. He is not equally situated here. I appreciate that professionally, this must have been quite an ordeal for him and others at the Department of Justice. And I also appreciate his point that there are some conflicting goals embedded in the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Produce them immediately and also ensure that all victim identifying information is redacted. Those are 2 things that are hard to meet at the same time. And yet, he is not similarly situated to the survivors. Their request for justice, their demand for information is one that he could have accommodated much earlier and without a congressional enactment.
Okay, so Dave, speaking of the survivors, Blanche made it clear that there were redactions here, as Fallon reported. There were redactions of women who may have been survivors, victims of Jeffrey Epstein, other than Ghislaine Maxwell. She will appear in some of these documents. No images of men will be shown that would otherwise compromise the survivors, but no images of men will also be redacted in the release here. What do you make of all of this and how the DOJ is handling it?
The big question for a lot of people is, where are the co-conspirators? Those names are the ones that everyone wants. And until we get those names, people are going to be dissatisfied. Remember, we were supposed to get an Epstein client list. There was never an Epstein client list, but there are names of co-conspirators in the files. Will we see those? So far, we have seen all those names redacted, except for Jean-Luc Brunel, who died of suicide. Ghislaine Maxwell, who started and convicted, so you can release her name. And Leslie Wexner. And we don't know why Leslie Wexner's name was unredacted while all the other alleged co-conspirators were redacted. So there seems to be, up to this point, no rhyme or reason why some names are there, others are not, why some pages are entirely redacted, all black all over the pages, while some are just pinpoint redactions. So hopefully we can have a more consistent approach now.
Are you surprised that there are 6 million documents that are just now coming into focus. The DOJ has acted surprised that they're just now discovering this tranche of documents.
Yes, I wonder about the organization of all this. Remember, they discovered 1 million plus documents that came from the Southern District of New York that were supposed to be transferred over to Maine Justice. So, these are all questions out there, and that's why we're right to ask Todd Blanche and others, why the slow roll? Are they trying to cover something up? And now he's out there saying, absolutely not. We're not trying to protect the boss here. We're just going to be releasing them as soon as we're practically able to, because they had manpower issues. But you can see why people are not giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Peter, Blanche said any member of Congress who has issues with what they're going to see today can take these unredacted files and go to the Department of Justice and ask questions, can get more information. What will you be watching for as far as how lawmakers approach what they see from the DOJ at this point?
Well, we'll see if any of them actually take them up on that. I've seen a number of occasions where members of Congress have been asked or offered the opportunity to look at documents, and then they don't actually take it up. They'd rather just talk about it without doing the homework. But what's fascinating here, as David was talking about, was the sort of the mistrust, I think, of this Justice Department and this administration on this issue, because in fact, as Lisa said, they could have done this a lot earlier. You have these people, including the President of the United States, who had fomented the idea that there was something here, a conspiracy, until they got into office, and suddenly they were the ones responsible for it. Todd Blanche said that just now that they had originally identified 6 million documents for this release, and then decided really it's only 3 million. That the 6 million was an example of over collecting, and they've decided that really only 3 million are actually responsive to the law that Congress passed. Okay, that may be the case. We don't know because we're not in there. But let me ask you this: what would Donald Trump, who was not president, say about that? What he would say about that is, there's something in the secret in those 3 million pages they're not releasing. You know he would, because that's the kind of thing he often did. And now he's on the other side of that equation, asking people to trust him when he would not have trusted Justice Department had he not been the president.
Peter, what do you make of the fact that Blanche is the face of this and Pam Bondi is nowhere to be seen at this moment?
Yeah, fascinating, right? She was not the one there taking questions today. Obviously, that indicates some sort of, continuing friction with her from the White House. They have not been happy with the way she's handled this. The president does trust Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche, of course, has been his personal attorney. And that's why when Todd Blanche said, the White House has nothing to do with this, it's a little hard, because, in fact, he is somebody who literally worked for Donald Trump as his personal lawyer, and was installed as a deputy attorney general because the president wanted somebody who was loyal in that. And so whether or not the White House was directly involved in the specific redactions or the specific decision-making about this, President Trump knew he had somebody in Todd Blanche as the deputy attorney general that he trusted. And that's why I think a lot of people out there who are looking for, a neutral handling of this are not satisfied.
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. Like the video. Why weren't these people in jail a long time ago? Certain people would not be in positions that they're in if they would have been put in jail a long time ago. Like the video as y'all come in. This is sickening.
About Bill Clinton, and these are things about Elon. In total, that means that the department produced approximately 3.5 million pages in compliance with the act. Literally millions of Jeffrey Epstein files have just been released. And these are new details. These are things about President Trump. These are things about Bill Gates. These are things about Bill Clinton. And these are things about Elon Musk. We are going to try to get to some of the highlights of some things that are happening right now and maybe give us details and a glimpse into Jeffrey Epstein's world. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, quite the update for you. So the DOJ announcing today that they are releasing more than 3 million pages of files in the Jeffrey Epstein probe. Now, this, of course, is pursuant to a Transparency Act that was passed by Congress. And we got to get into what we're seeing here. Now, to be clear, we're not going through 3 million pages, but we do have some highlights that we got to address. We got to put into context, too. I should also note that what is not being released, and what we will probably never likely see, I should note that as well, there are things, according to Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, that are allowed to be withheld under the law. These are files that contain, personally identifiable information of victims, victims' personal and medical files, any similar files, any depiction of child sexual abuse material, anything that would jeopardize an active federal investigation. Maybe that's a bit broad. And we may never actually know what any of this may be, but we got to take the government at its word. Anything that depicts or contains images of death, physical abuse, or injury, files covered by various privileges, so things like that. Actually, here's a section of what Todd Blanche had to say.
We complied with the act, and there is no we did not protect President Trump. We didn't protect or not protect anybody. I mean, I think that there's a hunger or a thirst for information that I do not think will be satisfied by the review of these documents. And there's nothing I can do about that.
Okay, so now there's a lot here to get through. Like, for example, Epstein accomplice, convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell. Her arrest photos are in there. This includes pictures from her home in New Hampshire where she was picked up. How about this? An email between First Lady Melania Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell from 2002, where she seemingly writes, "Dear G, how are you? Nice story about J.E., Jeffrey Epstein, in New York Mag. You look great in the picture. Or how about the current U.S. Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, who was apparently a neighbor of Jeffrey Epstein in New York City, where he allegedly sent an email to Epstein's assistant in 2015 inviting Epstein to a Democratic fundraiser for Hillary Clinton. Remember, Clinton ran against Trump? Oh, and then there's this. Bill Gates looking to get STD medication. Bombshell allegation that President Trump assaulted a minor. We're going to put that one into context, though. A lot here, a lot I want to get into, and there's definitely more about President Trump. There's more about former President Bill Clinton, Elon Musk. I want to bring on attorney Richard Schoenstein, though, to discuss all this. Rich, thanks so much for taking the time to do this. There's a big points that we're going to get into, but just general thoughts on the release so far. After you have read 3 million pages, what are your main takeaways?
Yeah, well, I haven't read every line or watched every video or looked at every photo, and there's a lot here. But I think of it sort of the same way I think about litigation, where there are often very large document productions.
Hold on.
And parties like to justify the way they're acting in litigation by saying, look at how many documents we produced. We produced so many documents. But often it's what's not produced. And my understanding here is there's a substantial amount of material that still hasn't been produced, and a substantial amount of material that is redacted. So we're going to look at what has been produced and analyze it as best we can, but this is not complete.
Okay, so let's start with what has been produced. And I have to start with the bombshell, okay? This bombshell concerning the President Trump. Now, there is apparently a sexual assault allegation that I'm about to read, and I want to put it into context. It seems the Department of Justice made a list of all of the sexual assault claims against the president. We don't really know why they put this list together, but it should be noted these are tips, meaning they're unverified claims. And according to CNN, this list was in an email that was sent from the FBI New York's field office to the Child Exploitation and Human Trafficking Task Force. So you could also argue this looks to be secondhand information, maybe even third-hand information in many cases. Now, the DOJ made that clear in a statement. Quote, this production may include fake or falsely submitted images, documents, or videos, as everything that was sent to the FBI by the public was included in the production that is responsive to the act. Some of the documents contain untrue and sensationalistic claims against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. To be clear, the claims are unfounded and false, and if they have a shred of credibility, they certainly would have been weaponized against President Trump already. Put that to the side, but we are going to warn you, the allegations made in these tips are very disturbing. For example, quote, Redacted reported an unidentified female friend who was forced to perform oral sex on President Trump approximately 35 years ago in New Jersey. The friend told Alexis that she was approximately 13 to 14 years old when this occurred, and the friend allegedly bit President Trump while performing. The friend was allegedly hit in the face after laughing about biting President Trump. The friend said she was also abused by Epstein, and the log states that this tip was sent to the Washington office to conduct an interview. The next tip reads, Redacted reported she had a friend, Redacted, who was a personal assistant to Epstein in Florida from 1986 until 1991 or 1992. This friend shared names of the guests at Epstein's parties to include Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Now, there's a call log that indicates that 2 voicemails were left for this complainant, but there was never a response. And then you have a tipster who connects the Alexander brothers. You know, the guys that are under federal indictment. They're in federal trial right now in New York for allegedly sex trafficking women. We've been covering it here on Sidebar. They allegedly have a connection to Epstein. Quote, at age 16, while modeling, caller attended 8 parties at Epstein's New York residence. On one occasion, caller reported she was sexually assaulted by Epstein. On another occasion, 2 twin brothers, Alon and Oren, lured caller and her friend upstairs, but they escaped back downstairs. Caller stated Oren raped her best friend, and a third brother, Tom, a 14-year-old girl named Redacted. Caller named other individuals involved in, quote, big orgy parties with her, other young girls, and older Victoria's Secret models, including Bill Clinton and Donald Trump. Online complainant reported she was a victim and witness to a sex trafficking ring at the Trump golf course in Rancho Palos Verdes, California between 1995 and 1996. Complainant reported Ghislaine Maxwell as the madam and broker for sex parties, clients of whom included Epstein, Robin Leach, and Donald Trump. Quote, the guests were older men and included Elon Musk, Don Jr., Ivanka Trump, and Eric Trump were there. Attorney Alan Dershowitz was also there with attorney Bob Shapiro. We were taken in rooms, forced to give to Donald Trump, forced to allow, I think this says penetration. 13 years old when Donald J. Trump raped me. Ghislaine Maxwell was also present. Okay, Rich, what do we make of this? I mean, because there does become a question of whether or not this...
So now everyone understands why I say people should be arrested and in jail. There's the information of what's been redacted and what's told in these documents. These people should be in jail.
These are credible claims.
Wellness knows you love your pet, but they're dumpster breath. Wellness...
And some of these people are holding high positions in our country. This is sickening. Other countries are laughing at us, and they feel that many things are really sick. Other countries are laughing. What the heck? And they're probably wondering the same thing. Why aren't these people in jail? Why was it just Epstein and Maxwell?
Some of what's asserted here is consistent with other allegations we've heard over the years against the president and certainly against Jeffrey Epstein, right? This is consistent with things we've heard. But in these files, it's not, it's sort of sometimes secondhand or third-hand hearsay. These are allegations. These are not things that were proven in court. These are not things that were taken to court. And in fairness, it's hard to give them that much credibility without knowing more. Now, if you had these allegations, you might want to do an investigation. And I'm a little bit put back by the DOJ saying, you know, these are meritless or these are false or none of this is true. That seems to go too far the other direction. But I don't know that we have.
Yes, lock them up. We want to hear about warrants on Monday, Tuesday. Lock these people up. It's sickening. What are we really talking about? How is this possible that they're still roaming the streets? Lock them up.
Enough information here to say we've established additional criminal conduct.
It is interesting to note, if we're questioning the transparency of the DOJ, if you really believe they were going to hide information, they never would have released this. I mean, at the very least, it's embarrassing for the president. No, I mean, so does it not give you a little bit of hope that they are releasing everything that they can release?
I see the argument to that extent. I think the DOJ has a credibility problem right off the bat because the guy who's leading this was Trump's personal lawyer. So I don't know how much credibility you can have when you're spearheading an investigation and you've come directly from Donald Trump's legal team to the DOJ to do this. That's a credibility problem. And the DOJ over the past years had tons of credibility problems. They have credibility problems right now based on what they've said about what's happening in Minneapolis. I mean, they're telling us things that obviously aren't true if you've watched videotape. So they have a big credibility problem. It's hard to take them at their word about any of this, frankly.
Let me ask you, and to be clear, law enforcement has never accused the president of any wrongdoing regarding Epstein. He's never been criminally charged or implicated. Let me ask you about Elon Musk. Elon Musk has come up in this. So Elon Musk comes up in this document dump in an email exchange from December 2013. Quote, "We'll be in the BVI," so the British Virgin Islands, / St. Bart's area over the holidays. Is there a good time to visit? And then a response from JEE Vacation responds, "I will send heli for you," probably meaning like a helicopter for you. Quote, "Actually, I can fly back early on the 3rd. We will be in St. Bart's. When should we head to your island on the 2nd? Quote, "Did we need to organize Elon to your island on January 2nd? Now that's interesting because Musk has previously tweeted, "Epstein tried to get me to go to his island and I refused." Now it's unclear if Musk ever actually followed through with this trip, but it wasn't just the travel that
So they put Epstein in jail for what his part was, but then they didn't put in jail who was along with what they were doing. Does that not sound normal? These people should be locked up. They should have been locked up years ago while he was locked up. This is crazy to me.
Island that was discussed via email. There's one from September 2012 that reads, "What does JE think of going to Mar-a-Lago after Christmas instead of his island?" And the sender and recipient are both redacted, but it's kind of unclear whether if this was a response to this. But again, it does make me question when I read something like this, Rich, big name, flashy, but there were people who were always connected to Epstein and people who may have traveled on his jet or in his inner circle. Doesn't automatically equate to guilt. It doesn't automatically equate to them being involved in criminal activity or having knowledge of criminal activity. But I do wonder if it actually supports Elon Musk in a way.
I don't know. It is true. Jeffrey Epstein had social interactions with a whole lot of rich and powerful people, including Donald Trump, including Bill Clinton, and possibly including Elon Musk and many others. And that is something unfortunate that we've learned, that a person who had so many, did so many bad things, was able to establish these connections with the rich and powerful. But it doesn't mean that everybody he had a connection with engaged in criminal activity. I would be shocked if it meant that. So, and I wouldn't be surprised if people who did have contact with Jeffrey Epstein tried to downplay that in the wake of what we all know, even if the contact was innocent.
Let me ask you this. Based on Todd Blanche's statement that they can redact anything that's part of an ongoing investigation, does this mean that they're not, I wouldn't be surprised, it's the president's own DOJ, but that they're not investigating Elon Musk, they're not investigating President Trump, and I'll talk about Bill Clinton in a minute, I'll talk about Bill Gates in a minute. Does that mean that they're not investigating them? Because otherwise they wouldn't be able to release this information, right?
I don't necessarily connect that. First of all, sometimes some of this stuff gets released and then pulled back. I think even today there have been some instances of things that were released and then pulled back. I don't have any reason to believe that the Department of Justice is investigating the president or Elon Musk for anything. I would be frankly surprised if they were, but I don't take that from what's been released. I just assume that from other facts.
Now, let's talk about former President Bill Clinton, who has come up quite a lot in the Jeffrey Epstein conversation. When Epstein sat for a deposition, this came out today, when Epstein sat for a deposition in the Virginia Giuffre lawsuit, this is an Epstein accuser. Remember, she filed a lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell, a defamation lawsuit. This was unsealed, I believe, in 2024. In this deposition from 2016, he sits down, and he would always invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination when he was asked about his connection or association or friendship with President Bill Clinton or the Clinton Foundation. For example, it was questions like, please describe all dinners you ever had with Bill Clinton. And he would say the fifth. Please describe all dinners you and Maxwell have ever had with Bill Clinton. Fifth. Please describe all dinners you, Maxwell, and Virginia have had with Bill Clinton. Fifth. Or how about this exchange? Isn't it true that at the time period 2000 to 2001, you were close friends with Bill Clinton? Fifth. And even to 2002, you remained close friends with Bill Clinton, right? Fifth. Bill Clinton flew on your jet a number of times in 2002, right? Fifth. In May of 2002, Bill Clinton was on your jet several times, right? Fifth. How about this one? You've heard of the Clinton Foundation, right? Fifth. Please describe all of your interactions with the Clinton Foundation. Fifth. Is it true that you helped Bill Clinton organize the Clinton Foundation? Fifth. Did you discuss with Bill Clinton the idea of creating a foundation? Fifth. Now, Clinton has always denied the allegations. He's always denied having any knowledge of what Epstein was up to. His spokesperson said that the president cut off ties with the disgraced financier before he was charged with soliciting prostitution in 2006. But is it strange to you, Rich, that he kept invoking the fifth every 5 seconds when it came to Clinton?
So sometimes defendants or witnesses will cut off an entire line of questioning with a Fifth Amendment right. And so it may be that he was under the view that if he was asked anything about Clinton, he would take the fifth and not answer it, as was his right as being, a criminal defendant or under investigation or whatever he was at that moment. There's nothing we can do about that. I do think it's a little troubling that Bill Clinton hasn't been more forthcoming with answers about all of this stuff, other than just kind of a general denial. I find that disappointing as well.
When you couple that also with the photos that were released of Clinton recently, right, in the pool, the hot tub, whatever it was. And by the way, the Clintons recently refused a subpoena from the House Oversight Committee to have them testify. There's now a question. The House voted to hold the Clintons in contempt. Does this cast a suspicious net around him?
Like the video, fair use as the commercial go past. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, you guys. Please continue to hit the like button. Please double tap the screen to continue to hit the like button. Let's get us back into the algorithm. Thank you. Let's continue.
Sure. I think you justified to say, gee, Clinton, made some trips to Trump Epstein Island, and what's that all about, and why is he refusing to answer questions about it? And I understand that people have questions about that. And I understand people saying he should have answered the congressional subpoena, and those proceedings will play out however they play out. I will say, though, that Bill Clinton is no longer president and hasn't been in several decades and is not running for office and has maybe a lesser need to justify himself in public than other people.
By the way, if you want a full breakdown of what it could mean for the president to possibly be held in contempt, Jesse Weber Live on News Nation. They did a full breakdown of that Monday through Friday.
Great show.
Go get it, Eastern.
Go get it.
Thank you. Okay, so back to this. I have to talk about Bill Gates. This was another bombshell. So back in 2013, the way that I'm understanding this is Jeffrey Epstein allegedly claimed that the Microsoft co-founder was basically looking to get some medication to treat an STD because of having sex with Russian girls, okay? So Epstein had apparently penned this draft email on behalf...
That's crazy in itself. Like the video, continue to hit the like button. Thank you. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Of a Gates advisor, because this person looks like wanted to leave the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So it says, quote, during the past few weeks, I've been caught up in a severe marital dispute between Melinda and Bill. In my role as his right hand, I have been asked on multiple occasions and in hindsight wrongly acquiesced into participating in things that have ranged from the morally inappropriate to the ethically unsound, and have been repeatedly asked to do other things that get near and potentially over the line into the illegal. From helping Bill to get drugs in order to deal with consequences of sex with Russian girls, to facilitating his illicit trysts with married women, to being asked to provide Adderall. I feel I owe it to my friends and future colleagues to admit a moral failure, to ask forgiveness, and to move on with my life. And there is apparently a separate draft email to Bill Gates, where again Epstein is portraying himself as this advisor. Called Bill Gates said that he's engaged in a cover-up so that you can maintain the reputation that you've worked so hard to achieve. Implore me to please delete the emails regarding your STD. You request that I provide you antibiotics that you can surreptitiously give to Melinda, and the description of your I am concerned that if Melinda decides, as you said, to file for a public divorce, the damage done to the pledge program alone will result in billions of dollars of money no longer being used for social good, as I'm sure that some wives and husbands would feel free to retreat from their commitments. Now, this is a complicated one, Rich. So, again, it's like Epstein speaking on behalf of somebody else. I have no idea if these allegations are true, but your thoughts?
Yeah, well, and that's a big problem with this entire endeavor. So these are salacious allegations. There have been, those kind of allegations about Bill Gates in the past, and there often are those kind of allegations against the rich and powerful. But a problem with this Epstein file endeavor is documents don't usually prove anything standing alone. And releasing the documents, I'm for it. I think transparency is good. I don't see why these were withheld. I think there's some value here, but it's going to be hard to prove anything unless you have government offices investigating earnestly and prosecuting when they're aware of misconduct. You're not going to get to the bottom of it and get, criminal convictions and the like. Otherwise, all you're going to get are millions of documents and millions of questions.
Now, a spokesperson for Bill Gates has rejected any allegations that were laid out here and basically said these claims are absolutely absurd and completely false. The only thing these documents demonstrate is Epstein's frustration that he did not have an ongoing relationship with Gates and the lengths he would go to entrap and defame. By the way, just go back to Epstein. We talk about so many other people. Look at this allegation that Epstein assaulted a minor girl after she told him she previously had been molested. Okay, apparently she told the FBI this back in 2021. It's from a 302. It's a witness interview. We don't know if the FBI found evidence to substantiate this, but the notes say that this victim felt degraded when she went to Epstein's place, that she felt taken advantage of, that she said she also felt happy because she got a bunch of money from massages. But clearly, this is just another point in Epstein's playbook. So you couple that, Rich, with the Gates thing, right? It goes to this pattern of power, taking advantage of people, trying to compromise them. I mean, there are aspects of this we think about everybody else, but it does go back to the evil that was Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, 100%. Jeffrey Epstein was a horrible person and did many terrible things, including some of the things we're talking about, but also in a business sense. And he turned on people. He could not be trusted. You would not trust him if he was testifying. If he was testifying, he didn't take the fifth, you wouldn't trust him. And you can't really trust what he wrote in an email years and years and years ago. And it makes this endeavor, again, very difficult because you have an inherently untrustworthy source writing things that are not complete thoughts in any event. It just becomes very hard to piece it together.
Okay, let's see where this goes. I'm sure we'll maybe do another episode because there's going to be more things that come out of 3 million documents. Rich Schoenstein.
And who did they make the new Epstein? And will those people get away with a lot too? Years later, will we hear that there's more people that did similar things like Epstein did? Like the video. Fair use reaction clip.
Disturbing allegations about parties at Mar-a-Lago for so-called calendar girls, and some of which is too filthy to air on radio. And there's also the allegation by a woman that she was raped at 13 by Trump. But I should absolutely stress that this is uncorroborated. These are allegations. They're untested in court. They're unproven. And we do know that a lot of lurid claims were made. The FBI collected these claims over the years about what was going on with Epstein, and all the documents, or at least the vast majority of them, are now being published.
Joining me now is Sarah Baxter, who's director of the Mary Colvin Center for International Reporting. Good afternoon, Sarah.
Hello, Kathy.
There is a lot of news coming out of these millions of documents. I know you've only just got online like everyone else, but what are you able to ascertain from the many allegations contained within?
Well, first of all, Trump is mentioned hundreds of times, I believe, in these documents. I should stress that I'm only just catching up with the information like everybody else, and some of the news that's coming out thick and fast has not been fully verified. I have seen some very salacious accusations regarding Trump's behavior with so-called calendar girls at Mar-a-Lago. I have no idea whether this is true or not, I should stress. But
and he's always denied any wrongdoing, hasn't he?
He certainly has, and so we need to make that clear. But there's a lot to rifle through. Somebody else you might be feeling rather embarrassed and on the back foot today is Bill Gates, because there are some pretty seedy allegations that are currently being aired on some news websites, actually, about his behavior with Russian girls. So I can't say more at the time or right now, unless you want to encourage me to go further.
The issue with all of this is clearly that the people concerned deny all the allegations that are coming out, that are being dripped out online. There's just a flood of documents. But what is the sort of status of these allegations and the claims that are being made? Very lurid claims, as you've described.
Well, of course, we know that some very lurid claims have turned out to be accurate, and that's why Ghislaine Maxwell is sitting in jail at the moment for having procured and sex trafficked young women to Jeffrey Epstein. So we're not saying nothing happened with Jeffrey Epstein. On the other hand, what the Department of Justice has done has collected millions of documents and finally released a further 3 million today, which include more or less everything that mentioned that they collected in the course of their investigations about Epstein. And that includes a lot of names of famous and wealthy people. Now, it doesn't mean that everything that they collected was true. These are all allegations that, you know, would have been brought to court against Jeffrey Epstein, not killed himself, and, you know, had they been considered to warrant being brought before court. So this is the difficulty. We're now seeing a lot of information. Todd Blanche, speaking for the White House, said that, or rather for the Justice Department, said that a lot of information had been redacted where it relates to women, but not where it relates to men, as far as he was concerned, unless it was impossible not to redact, say, images of men at the same time.
And so he's denied, protecting Donald Trump in any way. I should say that the president himself is speaking and is signing executive orders. If he's questioned on this, if he takes questions, we'll of course cross live to that at the moment. But so far he's been talking about the economy and not this potentially huge story that is breaking online. As you say, President Trump mentioned hundreds of times in this tranche of 3 million files relating to Jeffrey Epstein. Just take us through a bit of the sort of potential embarrassment and perhaps more that this could cause Donald Trump.
Yeah, well, as mentioned, some rather nasty allegations are surfacing in these files from what we are able to see already. We don't know the truth of them yet, but perhaps, this will end up being tested. Perhaps people will come forward and speak about it. It's certainly embarrassing for Donald Trump. He has a get out that some of these friends of Epstein don't have, which is that he broke off his friendship with Epstein for whatever reason before Epstein was actually prosecuted for the first time for sex trafficking. So he's more in the clear, so to speak, than people like Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, who continue to be friends. I believe, by the way, that there's a little note from Ghislaine Maxwell to her sweet pea, believed to be Andrew, about the death of the Queen Mother. Yeah. That's incidental. We also see for the first time an actual mugshot of Ghislaine Maxwell, which is interesting as well.
And it's interesting that I was just going to say, Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, in that press conference he's just given, was asked if the public would learn the identities of the men who abused the girls from the documents. And he said that if we had information about men who abused women, we would prosecute them. So there's a clear sense there of the jeopardy in this release today.
Well, the one thing that everybody is really concerned about now is an allegation brought by Ghislaine Maxwell as a result of earlier document dumps, where it turns out that there were 25 named men, or actually 25 so-called accomplices, believed to be co-conspirators with Jeffrey Epstein, whose names were redacted in the earlier tranche of documents. And she wants to know who they are, because she said that if she had known about this, she would have brought them to give evidence at her trial. And, she's trying to get the verdict against her overturned. And so she wants to know who are these so-called 25 accomplices whose names have been redacted. So there's a lot of anticipation about whether or not we're going to find out more about these 25 men or not. Right. And these are people who came to a secret settlement earlier involving Jeffrey Epstein. Why was there a secret settlement? What did that involve? These are all very important questions.
Indeed. Well, we're going to let you just, if you wouldn't mind just holding on the line while we just go to a different interview, but you'll have a chance to sort of pore over some of these documents, and we'll come back to you as soon as we have any news coming from President Trump, who is still speaking about issues other than these Epstein files. And just to recap for anyone just joining now, President Trump is mentioned hundreds of times in these new files, according to the Department of Justice website search function. It's not yet clear what those mentions relate to. He's consistently denied wrongdoing in relation to Epstein. We'll bring you all the latest on this as the Department of Justice, the US Department of Justice, releases 3 million files related to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Let's go for an update to Sarah Baxter, journalist at the Marie Colvin Center for International Reporting. She's on the line now. She's been getting across what's in those documents. Sarah, what have you managed to establish?
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. So are they saying just because he's no longer here, a lot of things did not proceed, but she went to jail? Like the video, fair use reaction clip. This is crazy. Allegedly, there's videos, there's conversation. Why aren't these people in jail? Like the video, let's continue.
taste of what might be in them, but there seems to have be some rather disturbing allegations about parties at Mar-a-Lago for so-called calendar girls, and some of which is too filthy to air on radio. And there's also the allegation by a woman that she was raped at 13 by Trump. This is uncorroborated. These are allegations. They're untested in court. They're unproven. And we do know that a lot of lurid claims were made. The FBI collected these claims over the years about what was going on with Epstein, and all the documents, or at least the vast majority of them, are now being published. So, but
this is a woman who claims that at the age of 13, Donald Trump raped her. He's always denied any wrongdoing. But that is an incendiary claim, isn't it?
Well, it is absolutely incendiary, and if there's any truth to it at all, we're going to have to see if there are, if the woman herself is willing to come forward and whether she's a credible witness. Unfortunately, we're not in that era where you can just say something like that about the President of the United States and be instinctively believed, but it's an incredibly dangerous allegation.
And just tell us about the status of these allegations, because that is one of many allegations within these documents. But how is it all displayed online for those who haven't got online to see it?
Yeah, well, at the moment, all the papers have been released, and now journalists are sifting through them, and no doubt others as well. So, the material is freely available, but what's so difficult is that obviously conspiracy theorists are going to take unproven allegations as fact. And yet we do know that a lot of proven allegations are extremely disturbing.
Yeah.
And that Jeffrey Epstein was a paedophile, that he was a sex trafficker. And Ghislaine Maxwell is sitting in jail right now for her role in procuring women to be abused by Epstein, underage women. We know that Donald Trump knew that Jeffrey Epstein liked women on the younger side, and they were friends. So this is the background context to this, but it doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that everything that is turning up in these files is true.
And of course, it's difficult, isn't it, as you say, that you have this allegation about a woman talking about when she was 13 years old, and there's no sense of what happened to that allegation, how it was assessed, is there?
There really isn't. And now, of course, a lot of men who were in Epstein's circle, started to say they were just there for their sort of, philosophical salons and so forth. And, and the more one peers into the files and sees the photographs of them standing next to scantily clad young women, etc., the more that kind of stuff starts to fall apart under scrutiny. But this particular allegation is so serious that, one really... the mind boggles as to whether it's true or not.
Well, and you would have thought that such an allegation, or at least some general questions, might be put to Donald Trump in that press conference he's just given, but there was no question forthcoming. What do you make of that?
Well, I find this jaw-dropping. I do know that the press corps has, treats the president with a lot more respect than the British press treats its prime ministers. But I was astonished that not one person asked even the most general question about what Donald Trump made about this Epstein release, even if they didn't at that time know about this specific allegation of rape. Just seems like an extraordinary dereliction of duty. But I wasn't there, and I don't know exactly what was going on at that press conference. I only know what Donald Trump said, and he was not put on the spot.
And, sometimes, obviously, presidents, prime ministers, they pick journalists they think might be friendlier to them, and that could have happened in this instance. But even so, you would have thought that someone might have shouted a question, at least attempted to get something in at the end.
Honestly, I'm baffled. I certainly would have been
jumping at the bit.
Back, would have yelled something.
Yeah. Just before you go, you mentioned some claims that are too disgusting to repeat on air, and they really are. But a lot of these allegations centre around Mar-a-Lago, don't they? Trump's club.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of connections to Epstein at Mar-a-Lago. We know, for instance, that he apparently poached Virginia Giuffre, who was working at the time at Mar-a-Lago, to, come and work for him, Epstein. And, she ended up, giving those sexual massages, etc., and was a key part of the evidence against Epstein. Who, Epstein and Donald Trump were... really good pals back in the day. They seemed to, Epstein was treated as a sort of guest at Mar-a-Lago, and we know there's a lot of photographic evidence of Trump hanging out with Epstein. So it doesn't mean, of course, that he was party to any wrongdoing with underage women. But we do know they hung out together and seemed to be extraordinarily good friends, at least for a certain period of their lives.
Sarah Baxter, thank you very much for taking us through that. Pretty jaw-dropping claims, as you say. Donald Trump has always denied any wrongdoing. Important to state that these are allegations, and we don't know the weight given to these allegations.
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. Please like the video as you guys come in. Are you guys surprised that there's no arrest warrants going out? Are they trying to say some of this stuff was not looked into at the time because he passed? So what does that mean? In the documents, people weren't going after those people and Epstein? It's not making no sense. Like the video, like the video. So they went after Epstein.
Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said the DOJ.
So it almost seems as if they just went after Epstein, but why would they not go after the other people? And those people should have been arrested and in jail along with him.
Had identified as, quote, potentially responsive to the law during its collection efforts, but only releasing half that number. Here's what the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, Robert Garcia, had to say. They made it pretty clear, the DOJ, that they're done releasing files. It's only about 50% of what they have in their possession. So half of the files in their possession, they're choosing to not release. This continues to be a major White House cover-up. And they went on today. Mr. Blanche went on to talk about what they wouldn't release. Things that they basically are creating themselves. They're creating laws themselves that don't exist, by the way, in the subpoena that was passed during the summer for the files. Joining us now is Congressman James Walkinshaw, Democrat from Virginia. He is a member of the House Oversight Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for making the trek in the ice still that's happening here in the DMV. 50% of the documents, that seems like a lot. So what we're supposed to take from that, I assume, is that the DOJ is saying the rest of this does not have to be released because it comports with the law, and that at the end of the day, these redactions can happen. I want to read from, you know this, but on this, the kinds of documents that can be withheld based on the Epstein Files Transparency Act. They can be withheld based on victim privacy, child sexual abuse materials, active federal investigations, graphic content, and national security. Blanche said that he would comply with informing Congress on explanations for each of the documents withheld, but he also added that some of them were not released because of attorney-client privilege. That one seems very confusing to me. That is not on this list I just read.
Yeah, right. The law doesn't allow for that. And the delta of 3 million files, right? So Blanche said there were 6 million. 3 million have been released. Of that 3 million, they're heavily redacted, right? So the redactions aren't even counted in that 50%. Blanche has said that they over-collected when they got to the 6 million files. The law doesn't allow them to refuse to release files that subjectively Donald Trump's personal lawyer believes were over-collected. They got to release all the files, all 6 million that are in their possession, with the appropriate redactions. And I have a lot of questions about the volume and the extent of the redactions, even in the 3 million we've received.
And they have 15 days from the end of their release, based on the law, to then explain all those redactions to Congress.
That's right.
This parallel investigation that Oversight, you and the committee have been conducting in terms of subpoenaing associates of Jeffrey Epstein and trying to essentially replicate the work of the Justice Department by obtaining as many documents as you guys can. Can you give us an update on where that stands? If you've received new materials that you guys are going through, any new subpoenas that have gone out?
We haven't received new materials and there aren't new subpoenas. However, we do have depositions scheduled with Epstein's accountant and his attorneys, the attorneys for his estate, in the coming weeks. And my hope is, as we go through these 3 million files, that we'll get information that can help guide the questions we ask of those individuals. One of the things that we have been working very hard to do as Oversight Democrats is follow the money, because I'm not confident, we're not confident that the FBI in their initial investigations of Epstein did a good enough job of following the money. There were millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars involved in this sex trafficking, this child sex trafficking ring, and we need to understand what financial institutions were involved, how were they involved, who knew what was going on, and following the money is the best way to do that.
A lot was released yesterday. Was like 120,000 pictures, 3 million documents, and all of that. Of the materials that were released that you were actually able to take a look at, anything new, anything jump out at you as either concerning or new or...
There's about 91 people in the building. Please hit the subscribe button, you guys. We're trying to hit 50K by next month. Please hit the subscribe button and thank you. Continue to hit the like button. The like should match the views. Continue to double tap the screen. Thank you.
Maybe not a bombshell, but something that gets you, and therefore us, closer to the truth?
Well, I think we learned yesterday that there are some high-profile individuals who haven't been truthful about the extent of their communications and involvement with Epstein, right? Elon Musk, Howard Lutnick, Steve Bannon corresponding with Epstein in 2019, right? Everybody knew what Epstein had done by 2019. And then obviously... Peter Attia, that's right. Yeah, others. And obviously and you know, it's fair to say, unverified allegations against President Trump that are included. And some of those have been made public before and have been evaluated by the media and others. Some are new. I think they all deserve scrutiny, and we need to run them all down. And if they're false, okay, they're false. One of them in the subscript said the woman who made the allegation was not credible. And I want to learn more about that as someone who has worked on sexual and domestic violence issues. I have a lot of questions anytime an investigator says that a woman coming forward is not credible. So I think we need to explore all of those and understand fully whether they were investigated to the extent they needed to be.
Can we actually stay on that topic for a second? Because Donald Trump has also mentioned extensively throughout all these documents, a lot of that information though has not been corroborated.
That's right.
Is there anything in particular that stands out to you that is at the top of the list in terms of trying to pin down that information, verify it, and corroborate it?
Well, I think one way we could verify and corroborate it or not would be to have some of the FBI's statements, right, or the statements that survivors and those making allegations submitted to the FBI. What we have in the files is a summary, a spreadsheet basically summarizing them. We don't have the written statements that were taken. We don't have transcripts of interviews that were conducted. So I think that could help us learn more.
I want to play something from Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, who's the former personal attorney of the president, who said and claimed that the White House played no role in the Epstein file review. Let's play that.
Have you ever done
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. Like the video as you guys come in. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notification. Okay, the commercial has passed. Like the video.
My team has certain communications with the White House. Let me just be clear. They had nothing to do with this review. They had no oversight over this review. They did not tell this department how to do our review, what to look for, what to redact, what to not redact.
That is difficult to believe for those of us who have been paying attention and have eyeballs and ears, because this president, at the very least, has made very implicit direction to the DOJ on Epstein, talking about who he thinks should be investigated, talking about that, saying what he thinks his relationship with Epstein was. Yeah. Do you trust that the House had no hand in this? There's also reporting, and I think, as a matter of fact, Susie Wiles said herself in a Vanity Fair article that she had talked to Attorney General Pam Bondi about something.
Yes. Two things I would say. I want to see the Deputy Attorney General answer that question under oath. And I think perhaps in a future Congress, he'll be asked to do that. But the other thing, look, the way this administration operates, and I won't compare it to any other kinds of organizations, but people know what the boss wants. So the boss doesn't necessarily have to always explicitly direct it. That's the way this administration operates, and that might have been the case here.
As a former New Yorker, we would call that mob talk.
You said it, not me.
Politico reported that the House Judiciary Committee has scheduled a hearing with Attorney General Pam Bondi on February 11th, so in just a couple of weeks. She might as well be on the side of a milk carton when it comes to the Epstein file release. One, why do you think she hasn't been anywhere near this? And two, what do you hope your colleagues on the Judiciary Committee will ask her?
Well, look, Pam Bondi is on the ropes inside the administration. I think that's been widely reported. The president's frustrated with her inability to explain the inexplicable, in my opinion. So they're frustrated with her public appearances. I want to understand, I think the Judiciary Committee, Democrats will get to this. Why didn't they follow the law? The law was very clear about the deadline. The law was very clear. That's right. We're long past that. The law was very clear about the redactions. They did not follow the law. They have not followed the law. Why? She needs to be asked that question.
Congressman James Walkinshaw, please come back, especially if you're able to actually ultimately see these redacted documents and tell us what you're not supposed to be telling us about.
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. Let's continue. There's a lot going on, y'all. A lot. Like the video as y'all come in.
Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. She appeared at the site of an FBI search of an elections facility in Fulton County, Georgia this week. Agents seized materials related to the 2020 election. The search itself raised alarms for elections officials around the country, coming on the heels of Attorney General Pam Bondi's demand for voter rolls from Minnesota. The Trump administration has requested voter data from nearly every state and sued more than 20 of them for refusing to provide that data. On Friday, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche defended the search and Gabbard's presence in Georgia.
It should be no surprise to many in this room that, or anybody watching, that election integrity is extraordinarily important to this administration, always has been and always will be. She doesn't work for the Department of Justice or the FBI. She's an extraordinarily important part of this administration. This administration coordinates everything we do as a group. And so I think her presence shouldn't be, there shouldn't be questioned, of course, and that's a big part of her job.
We're joined now by Maine Secretary of State Shenna Bellows. Secretary, thanks for joining us on set this morning. We appreciate it. You are in town because you attended the National Association of Secretaries of State Conference. I imagine you have some Republican friends who also attended. What are they saying behind closed doors that they're not saying publicly about this administration's obsession with relitigating the election that Donald Trump lost?
Behind closed doors, they agree with us. This is bullshit. And for Gabbard to be on site handling ballots, remember, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, it's a domestic spy agency. Spies have no place in election administration in a democracy. And Trump's like the old boyfriend you can't get rid of, right? The country broke up with him in 2020. He can't get over with it. And his minions need to kiss the ring and
what do you
pretend.
think the real reason is, though, that they won't come out and say anything against him? I mean, is it that they don't want to be targeted? Is it that they think they're going to lose a subsequent election?
For Republicans to speak out against Trump is electoral suicide. So they're afraid of losing their next election, that it'd be the end of their political career. But they know that what Gabbard and Bondi and Noem are doing is wrong. It's unconstitutional. The Constitution puts the states, not the federal government, in charge of our elections. If Biden were doing this, they'd be calling for his head. Can you imagine?
Are your Republican colleagues, in addition to fear of electoral suicide, are they worried about their own physical safety as a result of going against the president, if they were to do so?
I think a lot of us are. I mean, I've been doxxed, swatted, threatened. Just last week, I was doxxed again. And, we take real risks in standing up to this administration and speaking out. And certainly, I was saying to my Republican colleagues, please, the Democratic states, stand up for us. And they say, we're being targeted too.
Yeah. You were at, as Jackie mentioned, the National Association of Secretaries of State. You guys were all here meeting. A couple days ago, I'd heard that Tulsi Gabbard, Kristi Noem, and Pam Bondi had kind of bogarted themselves apparently onto your agenda, where they were not apparently supposed to be there at one point. Let's show the photo, because eventually they just abruptly canceled. We do not know why all of a sudden they canceled. We do have a photo from MS Now reporter Julia Jester that I'd like to show that shows the empty chairs on stage. They had already set up for them to get on stage. One, why do you think the DNI, the DHS Secretary, and the Attorney General are trying to talk to Secretaries of State? And two, do you have any idea why it was canceled so abruptly?
Well, these three, they play cowboys on TV and TikTok and Twitter, right? They pretend to be tough, and maybe trying to get on our agenda was a move to intimidate us. But like most bullies, they're cowards. I think they got scared. And you know what I would ask them? I would ask Noem to resign because she's murdered 2 American citizens. Chaos in the streets of Maine. I would have asked Bondi to butt out of our federal elections. I've got a petition on my website, bellowsformaine.com, calling for her to stop interfering with state elections. And Gabbard needs to also get out of elections because, again, spies have no place in our democracy.
Why do you think they want your voter rolls? Your election information?
Well, it's clear. It's much like what ICE is trying to do with assembling huge amounts of data on Americans to conduct surveillance, to scare people. Because if the Department of Justice, which has the power to investigate, prosecute, put people in jail, knows who's a Democrat, who's a Republican, that might have a chilling effect. People might be afraid to register as Democrats or to attend a primary. And the federal government has a terrible record keeping data safe. It's a huge violation of privacy. But most importantly, they want to interfere in the 2026 election. They're afraid of accountability by the voters.
And that's the question, right? Is because as Jackie was reading, Trump is obsessed with 2020, but it also appears that they are obsessed with 2026 and 2028. So some of these actions can be and are about 2020 and him trying to relitigate and cosplay like he was harmed in some way in 2020. But also about letting them know what they could do and giving them the weapons to do something in 2026, 2028.
Well, at this conference, we're suddenly talking about how do we safeguard ballots and equipment from federal interference, from federal raid.
Which is new, I assume.
Which is new.
Yeah.
We're talking about the prospect of masked, armed thugs, federal agents roaming the streets and how that might intimidate voters. And, 2026 is going to be a warm-up for 2028. They're afraid they're going to lose. It's one of the reasons I'm running for governor is we need strong leaders in the states who will stand up for state sovereignty.
Actually, can we quickly play a soundbite from Senator Mark Warner over the concerns that are percolating about sending ICE to polling locations? We'll get your response on the other side.
Like the video, fair use, reaction clip. Like the video as you guys come in.
I'm sorry, but
Like the video as you guys come in. Thanks for being here. Let's continue.
One of the reasons why we have to make sure that we get some guardrails on ICE, and this is not going far afield, is what I fear beyond the potential.
Let's continue with some Maxwell and her part in all this. Like the video as y'all come in. This is going to be law crimes.
People who were not charged, the government. Ghislaine Maxwell has just dropped a bombshell. In a new court filing, she claims that 25 men reached secret deals, secret settlements in the Jeffrey Epstein saga, on top of 4 who were never indicted too. People who were not charged, the government allegedly hid this information from her. Got to break it down if this is true. What it could mean, who these people are, could she be set free? I got the perfect person to talk to, a former federal prosecutor. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Look, before we get into this, as we're about to talk about the Ghislaine Maxwell story, staying on top of the news today is so important. The problem is, with all the media bias these days, who knows what to believe? That is why I want to introduce you to our sponsor, Straight Arrow News. Okay, so Straight Arrow News is a personalized news platform that gives readers fact-based journalism to inform and build trust. Their media mist tool, it shows readers headlines that are not seen on mainstream outlets. It provides useful commentary that cuts through all of that sensational spin. Their site, their app, it also points out all the bias with a media landscape tool to group sources by political leaning, so you have full transparency. If you are ready for a better way to get the news, then go to san.com/sidebar or just click the link in my description. This is Straight Arrow News. Skip the drama, get the facts. Welcome back to trustworthy journalism. Okay, bombshell news in the continuing Jeffrey Epstein-Ghislaine Maxwell saga. So according to a newly filed court document, Ghislaine Maxwell, the former associate of Jeffrey Epstein, she was convicted of sex trafficking minors, sentenced to 20 years in prison. She claims that 25 men, maybe friends, associates of the deceased financier, have been protected under secret settlements, secret deals, and that this information was not revealed to her during her trial. This is on top of what she claims are 4 other individuals, alleged co-conspirators, who were never charged. Obviously, I have thoughts. Is she telling the truth, particularly given her past, in light of what she's trying to do now? If this is true, number one, wow. And who are these people? What is a secret settlement? Can we ever find out? Can the public ever find out? So I'm made of questions. I'm bringing on an expert right now to tackle all of this. I'm bringing on right now former federal prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, Gene Rossi. Gene, thank you so much for taking the time. Really, really appreciate it. Okay. Before I get into any of these alleged people who made secret deals, first, just to provide context, just so our audience understands, this is a part of Ghislaine Maxwell's habeas corpus petition, okay? Now, we know that the Supreme Court previously denied even hearing her appeal of her conviction. So for anybody who doesn't know, just generally speaking, Gene, what is a habeas corpus petition and what can a court do with it?
That's a great question. The most famous habeas corpus petition that was granted is a famous case, I think, from the 1970s, Brewer versus Williams. It was a murder of a 10-year-old girl on Christmas Eve in Des Moines, Iowa. And it was a state case. And the defendant, Mr. Williams, had mental health challenges, was recently released from a mental institution, and he strangled and mutilated and killed a 12-year-old girl on Christmas Eve. And it went up through the state system, exhausted all appeals, and then Mr. Williams filed a petition in federal court called Brewer versus Williams. Who's Brewer? Brewer is the warden where he was being held. But that's a state case. And it went up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they reversed. There was a violation of the right to counsel, new trial. He was convicted again. That's a state case. This is a federal case, and the same standards apply. Miss Ghislaine Maxwell is filing a civil lawsuit, not a criminal, a civil lawsuit as a petitioner, alleging that constitutional provisions have been violated, and she was convicted, and it was miscarriage of justice. She raises about 9 points in her pro se petition that she allegedly wrote. She probably had some jailhouse lawyers, but 50 pages, or give or take a few pages. It's a civil lawsuit, and the burden of proof is preponderance that she has to bear to show that a constitutional violation occurred. And what would be the violations in this case?
Right. So just to be clear, in other words, this is somebody saying that detention is unlawful, right? And she's saying there's substantial new evidence that has come out throughout her conviction, throughout her sentence, that when you look at lawsuits that were filed, government disclosures, investigative reports, documents, it's very clear, right, that if she had this information, her whole trial would have been different, her rights were violated. If I'm understanding it right, yeah, there's about 9 points. Just before we get into it, how often are these successful? I mean, how often can this result in a conviction being thrown out or a sentence, her being resentenced?
can give you two good examples. One involves Jean Rossi. I convicted somebody of drug trafficking in 2006. Her name was, I'll call her Barbara. Fake name. Barbara Smith. That's a fake name. I convicted her. She got sentenced to 7 years. About a year later, she filed a habeas corpus petition. She had counsel, great counsel, and she argued that the prior attorneys did not give her good, adequate information regarding plea negotiations. Judge T.S. Ellis III, who treated me like a son and he passed away a few months ago, he was a legend. He had the 2255 habeas hearing. He granted the petition. After he granted the petition, 5 minutes later, she pleaded guilty to time served. So I lost that hearing. Right. So it's possible. Second example is there's a famous case. It's a state case. It's Commonwealth of Virginia versus Justin Wolf. He was sentenced to death for drug trafficking and allegedly hiring somebody to kill a customer. It went up through the system, and the Virginia Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court reversed the conviction. It's now being appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, habeas petition, and that's all I'm going to say about it because I'm assisting in that case. But it's possible to win both a federal habeas petition and also a state habeas petition. Yes.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we're going to go through some of her points, right? She says there's juror misconduct. The government misrepresented evidence. She brings up Epstein's non-prosecution agreement, back in the day, the one that he signed to get him away from being charged federally, because she has always argued that she was covered under that she was granted immunity. Maybe we'll get to that. But we got to start with this bombshell, okay? So this is the language directly from the filing. I'm going to read specifically from certain parts about these co-conspirators, these secret agreements, okay? Like this, quote, the secret settlements with the 25 men were hidden from the petitioner, meaning Ghislaine Maxwell. That information would have changed the outcome of the trial, and petitioner would have certainly called the men as witnesses. The degree of contamination and collusion between...
Thank you for the gifted. Thank you for the gifted. I appreciate you. Thank you for the gifted. Any super chats are welcome. Gifteds are welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Witnesses combined with withholding of Brady material by the government. Brady material is evidence that helps the defendant, needs to be turned over. Quote, that would call into question the credibility of every complainant that interfaced with plaintiff's lawyers. All of them would have changed the outcome of the trial. Remember, there was always a lot of litigation with respect to Epstein and Maxwell that was in the background of the criminal case. So that argument that information was withheld from her and her team is very significant. And then you have this argument of selective prosecution, right? That she is being singled out, that other people could have been charged, but why is she the only one being charged like this? Is it an unfair prosecution? Quote, you would have sent an angel soft.
Like the video, fair use is a good question. All of them should have been arrested and put in jail. All of them. Let the commercial go past. Like the video. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Selective prosecution bears the heavy burden of establishing at least prima facie that while others similarly situated have not generally been...
I feel bad for these victims. Not a lot of movement has been made. Okay, he was put in jail. She's put in jail. But what about all the other people that had stuff to do with it? I feel bad for the victim. This is crazy.
Proceeded or prosecuted against because of conduct of the type forming the basis of the charge against him, this person has been singled out for prosecution. That's one thing you have to show. And that the government has a discriminatory selection of the defendant for prosecution. And so here she says, quote, none of the 4 named co-conspirators or the 25 men with secret settlements were indicted. And then there's this, how former Attorney General Bill Barr, quote, admitted that post-Epstein's death, they were looking for someone to indict for trafficking. The petitioner was not named in Epstein's first or second indictment. 4 other women were named as co-conspirators, but none of the 4 were ever charged. The government could have indicted the 4 named co-conspirators or any of the 25 men that settled secretly with the plaintiff's lawyers, but did not. And then in the context of saying how litigation was used against her in the criminal case, quote, the intervening years were used to exploit the civil litigation process to gain a tactical advantage, using plaintiff's lawyers in the front and behind the scenes to defame petitioner in pleadings, working the media, promoting fake news, falsely portraying her and Epstein as one person, while working to invalidate, overturn the NPA, the non-prosecution agreement, using the CVRA as litigated in points 3 and 4 above. Again, so the NPA is Epstein's non-prosecution agreement back in 2007 that he signed. She claims she was covered by. She claims the section about granting immunity to co-conspirators means her. But the prosecution has always argued, and this was upheld by the court on appeal, that the only people bound by this are Florida prosecutors, not New York prosecutors. So they say her prosecution was legitimate. And the Supreme Court, as I mentioned, declined to hear her appeal. The CVRA, which I mentioned, is the Crime Victims' Rights Act. So it just establishes a Bill of Federal Rights for a victim. But anyway, it goes on to say, quote, Edwards, who is Bradley Edwards, represented a lot of Jeffrey Epstein accusers. Edwards used as the proxy for AUSA Villafana, both conspiring to overturn the NPA through the CVR litigation, obtaining police records and victims' names from law enforcement and USAO Florida, AUSA Villavana sharing information with potential claimants, using the information for secret settlements with men with deep pockets in exchange for keeping the identity of those men out of the public arena to benefit the personal pocketbooks of plaintiffs' lawyers. And she says it's listed out, quote, in 2016, the plaintiffs' lawyers met to instigate an investigation into the petitioner. The plaintiffs' lawyers representing the complainants had approached SDNY in 2016 in an effort to promote and instigate a criminal prosecution because the SDFL was not happy with the NPA, and the plaintiffs' lawyers wanted to assist the CVR case for financial motives. There were 4 employee co-conspirators that were not indicted, but named in NPA and referenced in the Jeffrey Epstein indictment. New evidence reveals that there were 25 men with which the plaintiffs' lawyers reached secret settlements that could equally be considered as co-conspirators. None of these men have been prosecuted, and none has been revealed to petitioner. She would have called them as witnesses had she known. Okay, Gene, a lot there. But basically the argument is there were these secret settlements. There's other people that could have been indicted. She's the only one that was indicted. She didn't even know about these alleged secret settlements in the civil context, right? Because there was a lot of litigation regarding Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Your thoughts?
There's a famous case called Kyle v. Whitley. It was decided April 19th, 1995, the same day, ironically, as the Oklahoma City bombing. I remember that case very well. And what the Supreme Court said, it talked about the difference between Brady information and what they call Giglio information, Giglio. Brady information is information that raises a reasonable probability, not beyond a reasonable doubt, not even beyond preponderance, a reasonable probability that had that information been provided to the defendant, the outcome of the proceeding, the sentencing, the verdict would have been different. What I hear from you and what I hear from the reporting is that of those 25 or so settlements, there's a reasonable probability that had it been disclosed to Mix Maxwell's trial team, they could have investigated and gotten information as to why they were not charged, what benefits they got, and more important, whether it would help her argument of selective prosecution. And I would add this. It also could possibly help an argument for vindictive prosecution, where the prosecutors want to focus just on her. Vindictive and selective are kind of like cousins, and they both are bad. They are hard to prove, but this is evidence that could cause a reasonable probability that it could help her and cause a change in the verdict or decision of the court to sentence her to 20 years. So all I can say is this. This is a hot mess, and if there's a hearing on her petition, and there likely will be, you can guarantee that prosecutors may be called, either in the Southern District or in the Florida U.S. Attorney's Office, Miami. The lead prosecutor in Miami, who I understand wrote a 50-page draft indictment before Epstein got his sweetheart deal at the state level, should be called. The agents may be called. This is a hot, hot mess.
Right. I have to ask you, though, and we'll talk, I mean, you kind of mentioned this might be something that could go to her favor, but I'm confused. We have heard from the government say before that there was no Jeffrey Epstein list, right? That there was no co-conspirators, collaborators, other people to charge. Is it possible she's telling the truth? Is it possible she's accurate? If you have people who entered into settlements, arguably they could have been brought up on criminal charges. I mean, unless I'm looking at this completely wrong. So is this something that the federal government, and I'll talk about what their latest filing too, is this something the federal government didn't know about? Is it true maybe these people did enter into settlements, but they couldn't be brought up on a crime? Because I'm wondering, there's always a question of whether Maxwell's credible or not. So you tell me what's going on here.
Jesse, I would be shocked if the prosecutors, either in Florida or SDNY, New York, did not have some inkling, if not actual knowledge, that these settlements were happening. And it's not prohibited for criminal prosecutors to gather information from civil attorneys who are parallel working to get the same goal, all right? They were trying to get a settlement of their clients, these 25 guys, if you will. And I can't believe that the federal prosecutors were clueless that those negotiations were happening and when they did happen. The key issue for me is the prosecutors have to argue that there was nothing in those settlements, nothing regarding the settlements of these 25 alleged defendants or alleged men. There was nothing in there that could possibly have helped her in her criminal case. It goes back to that test. There's nothing that would raise a reasonable probability that if she had this information, the outcome, the guilty verdicts, would have been different. That's their argument. The government has to make that argument or they're going to lose.
So people listening to this video, their main question is, okay, who are these people? Are we ever going to have that publicized? Now, the reason I'm going to ask you that, this is what I have to say. So, put into context, we could also talk about whether Maxwell's credible. I mean, she met with Deputy AG Todd Blanchard this summer. She's set to be deposed by the House Oversight Committee February 9th, even though her attorneys indicate she plans to plead the 5th, invoke her right against self-incrimination. By the way, her attorney, David Marcus, recently indicated that her testifying could jeopardize this habeas petition, which we're talking about. But this is what I want to ask you, whether or not this will ever become public, whether or not we would ever see who these 25 people are. Because, let's not forget what's happening right now. Congress Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act. It's forcing the DOJ to hand over everything in their possession related to Epstein. They had 30 days to do it. They reportedly have only turned over maybe a small percentage of the files, or at least a small percentage of it made public. And this is interesting because the DOJ filed this, I think, just the other day with 2 judges from the Southern District of New York Federal Court. I'm going to read you a portion of the letter. Again, keep in mind whether or not these 25 men, whether or not these settlements, these unidentified individuals, will we ever know who they are? So it says this. The department respectfully submits this letter as an update to its previous submissions to the court regarding the review and redaction of certain of the materials required to be published pursuant to the Epstein Files Transparency Act. The department continues to make substantial progress in its efforts to identify potentially responsive documents, review those documents, redact victim-identifying information and privileged information, and engage in quality control processes, and to prepare responsive documents for publication in accordance with the Act. Indeed, the department has reviewed millions of pages of materials, applying redactions as appropriate. The department continues to engage with victims and victims' counsel and apply quality control checks. These efforts include not only manual review by hundreds of department attorneys, agents, and others conducting page-by-page review of millions of pages of documents, but also electronic searches for victims' names or other identifiers to isolate documents that are particularly sensitive and require supplemental review, as well as relief from various protective orders issued in other courts. The department currently expects that it will complete this with respect to substantially all the potentially responsive documents, including publication to the Epstein Library website, which is public, in the near term. The department is not able to provide a specific date at this time and cautions that this ongoing work, included its call. All this may require additional efforts to ensure the protection of victim identifying information. It says, in addition, pursuant to the court's directive, including attorneys from the SDNY, they've taken an additional review to ensure that any production is consistent with both the letter and spirit of the court's protective order. So basically, Gene, they're saying we need more time. It's going to take a little bit, but near term. Again, from this, do you think these settlements are going to be made public? Are these individuals going to be identified if these settlements are true?
If I had to bet money, I think the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, all those people below them, plus the White House, because they're working together, they're not going to disclose the identities of those 25 or so persons who had settlements, civil settlements. They may provide a general summary, but not.
They should, and then that they should. Like the video, There's about 93 in the building. Please hit the subscribe button. We're trying to hit 50K by next month. Please hit the subscribe button. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Many details. I will defend the Department of Justice here. There's a ton of documents. And when they say hundreds of prosecutors are sifting through that, prosecutors and paralegals probably, I take them at their word because it is a lot of documents. I will say this. They're not going to be as transparent as the Attorney General suggested in February, March, when she said she had the list on my desk and she's going to disclose it. It's not going to be that transparent. They're going to redact a ton of information. You're going to have a kerfuffle with the committees, oversight committees on the Hill. That's going to be a hot mess. I will say this. In Brown versus Board of Education, the Supreme Court said that the states have to move with all deliberate haste and speed. Okay? That ended up being 12 to 15 years. The near term, what is the near term? Is that this year? Is it next year? Is it 2030? I smile when I hear the phrase near term with no date. So I don't think we're going to get this anytime soon, the disclosure of these individuals. And if we do, we get at best a very rough summary of what's there. But it goes back to what I said before. If those settlements have information that could help Ghislaine Maxwell in her 2255 petition, her habeas petition, which was filed, I think, December 17th. If it does, then a judge is going to order the Department of Justice, even if the names are redacted, to just disclose the contents of those settlements. And any benefit, this is the key, any benefit that the government gave those settled civil defendants in exchange for the civil settlements. That's important because it goes back to selective prosecution, possibly vindictive, and it could have provided evidence that could have helped her in her trial.
And I just want to be clear about something. Even though there's been a lot of questions about her credibility and questions about, the substance, the content of what she told Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, whether she was trying to say anything to get some sort of deal or get a pardon of some kind, her potentially testifying in front of Congress, that committee, she at the very least is not going to say anything about these settlements or reveal who these people are. I mean, I don't even know if she knows the identities per se about who these people are, but we shouldn't expect that if she does testify that she's going to spill the beans on this.
Not going to spill the beans. I would add this. The famous case of Brady versus Maryland. It involved facts, not that the defendant was innocent. What the prosecutor willfully withheld in Brady versus Maryland, I think it was a 1950s case, the conduct was, what they withheld was information that mitigated the role that Mr. Brady had in a robbery. It mitigated the role. He didn't say I'm innocent. It's just that I was a small fish in a big pond. These witnesses could be like Brady witnesses in Brady versus Maryland. They could say, you know what? Epstein was the key guy, and her role was de minimis or was a lot less than Epstein. That's still Brady information that could help a jury render a verdict. Going back to Kyles v. Whitley, April of 1995, what the court said is, if you have she has 9 issues.
Yeah.
If you have 9 issues that constitutional rights were violated, and she has 9, if each one individually doesn't result in a reasonable probability that the outcome could be different, if you combine the 9, or say you combine 5 or 6 of the 9, and you put it, I love food, if you put it in a big salad bowl, that combined cumulative effect of those 5 to 6 violations, each one not by itself can do it, but if you combine them all, that results in a new trial and a vacating of the conviction. That was a very important part of Kyle v. Whitley. They call it the cumulative test.
Okay, so you tell me, out of the 9 points, are there any ones in particular, individual?
I'll tell you one that I kind of like.
Okay.
Juror number 50 has a lot to answer for.
Well, explain it. Explain it. So apparently,
during voir dire, jury selection, either verbally and or in writing, jurors are asked questions, either by the judge and the attorneys, depends on the court. Those answers to those questions are under oath, subject to the pains and penalties of perjury. According to her allegations, and I just read them, juror number 50 has a lot of inconsistencies in her answers. And it appears to me that the trial judge was a little lenient on those inconsistencies. Ghislaine Maxwell is arguing that those aren't just innocent mistakes. Those are willful and intentional perjurious conduct and answers. And the issue was, this juror 50 was a guy. He had been subjected to sexual abuse back in the day, and there was a specific question. Have you ever been subjected to sexual abuse? 1, and have you discussed this with anybody recently? Well, yes, he did get subject to sexual abuse. And 2, according to Maxwell's filing, he was discussing it with reporters. So juror number 50 by itself could raise an issue. And why? It's like you have a bank robbery case, and a juror gives a false answer about whether they were a teller in a bank, at which the defendant pointed a gun. And it wasn't that case, but it was one before. If you allow that former teller in a bank who was subject to robbery in another matter on a jury, there is no way that defendant's going to get an acquittal.
Yeah.
That's the argument Maxwell's making. This juror poisoned the jury pool.
So I will agree with you with the habeas petition different from an appeal, right? If you have new information that's come out that you've only recently learned, this is very important. There are some arguments that she's repeating from her appeal. And I mean, just to end this up with the biggest one, the non-prosecution agreement. This is something that she's argued before, right? The non-prosecution agreement that Epstein entered into in 2007. There's a section that extends immunity to, quote, any potential co-conspirator. She's made the argument that covers me. But courts time and again have said, no, that only bound Florida prosecutors, not New York prosecutors. The Supreme Court didn't even take that up. Is this even relevant for her habeas petition? Would this even have grounds? Is this strong enough?
I would say that what she's brought up in her habeas petition does not affect dramatically, if at all, the argument that this non-prosecution agreement applies to Southern District of New York. It's rehashing old arguments. Yes, it's black letter law. It's in writing, in the letters. Whenever a government has a non-prosecution agreement, let's say the Miami U.S. Attorney, it only applies to that U.S. Attorney's office. It doesn't apply to the other 93 U.S. Attorney offices. That's black letter. You can be charged with drug trafficking in EDVA, and Michigan U.S. Attorney's Office in Detroit could charge money laundering based on the same facts, because they're separate sovereigns, if you will, each U.S. Attorney's Office, when it comes to non-prosecution agreements for letter immunity.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Let's see how this shakes up. Right now, she is potentially going to testify in front of Congress, but she's sitting at FPC Bryant. It's a minimum security federal prison in Texas. She was moved there, by the way, after her meeting with Todd Blanche. But let's see what happens. Gene Rossi, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
That's a pleasure.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always,
love Sidebar. Like the video as you guys come in. Like the video as you guys come in. Y'all know Sidebar is one of my favorites. Like the video as you guys come in. Are you surprised that she is trying to get out? Like the video. Hold on 1 second.
Actually, it's pretty believable. This is just another day. December 19th of last year was the date all of the Epstein files were required by law to be released. But as the federal government always says about your tax forms, your payments, and court appearances, better late than never.
The Department of Justice releasing its remaining documents from the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche saying the records will be posted throughout the day, including more than 2,000 videos, more than 180,000 images, some of the material so explicit you have to verify being an adult before you can actually access it.
Yep.
Well, that's comforting. Good to know our Department of Justice is taking
I did hear, before you can even get into the documents, you have to verify you're of age.
at security online vape shops, because nothing says impenetrable firewall quite like having to click yes. Fun fact, if you click no, Matt Gaetz gets an alert on his phone. And isn't it nice that our DOJ, which has spent the last year doing everything in their power to cover up a pedophile ring, are finally focused on the children? I just think it's sweet. But let's hear what Todd Blanche has to say.
Now, I want to talk for a few minutes about the department's document identification and review protocols. It consists of multiple layers of review and quality control designed to ensure compliance under the act and protect victims.
Well, that's honestly a good thing. These victims have been through enough trauma. The last thing they need is to deal with the heartache of having their names out there.
We're now hearing from some Epstein survivors, though, who say their names appear unredacted throughout the documents, despite assurances directly from DOJ that no personally identifiable information about victims would be released.
Hey, at least they took their time and still fucked it up. Now, obviously, one of the biggest criticisms of this entire process has been that the DOJ has done anything and everything to protect dear leader from culpability. But Mr. Blanche reiterated today that nothing could be further from the truth.
We did not protect President Trump. We didn't protect or not protect anybody. I mean, I think that there's a hunger or a thirst for information that I do not think will be satisfied by the review of these documents. And there's nothing I can do about that.
Nothing? I can think of one thing, which is release all the files. Oh, and also maybe not doing this could help.
It appears that at least a couple of the documents that we're talking about here have been removed since they were posted earlier by the Justice Department. We don't know why that is.
At this point, it's just embarrassing that the DOJ thinks they can post files online, remove them, and the internet won't notice. What's next, Blanche? Keeping them under wraps by taking them to a Coldplay concert? And it just so happens that some of the files which were removed are all about Donald Trump, and they are truly disturbing. One allegation was that a woman was forced to perform oral sex on President Trump 35 years ago in New Jersey. In another allegation, Donald Trump is accused of regularly paying a 13-year-old to perform sex acts on him in 1984. And in another, it states that Trump and Epstein had calendar girl parties at Mar-a-Lago where girls were auctioned off and then assaulted by them. Gee, I can't imagine who would ask to have those files taken offline. What makes the Epstein files and this administration's blatant cover-up of them so offensive is that this isn't just about one billionaire who acted alone. Besides Ghislaine Maxwell, it is clear that multiple other men were involved in the abuse of these young girls. But like the files themselves, it might be a little while before those names come to light.
Is the public going to learn the identities of the men who abused the girls with the information that you're releasing? And if not, why not? And then I have a quick follow-up.
You just baked in an assumption into your question that I have.
Good question. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. There's about 94 people in the building. Please hit subscribe, you guys. Please hit subscribe and turn on your notification. We're trying to hit 50K by next month. Thank you. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Never said, and I don't know to be true, is the public going to learn about men that abuse these girls? Like, what does that mean? I mean, I don't understand what that means.
Wow, Todd Blanche really pretending like it's his first day on the job. Abuse? Girls? You're saying there's some kind of sex trafficking ring? How could a physical ring be big enough for that? And if there's traffic, doesn't that mean they're actually not moving? Sorry, Todd, if the world isn't buying it.
There's this built-in assumption that somehow there's this hidden tranche of information of men that we know about that we're covering up or that we're choosing not to prosecute. That is not the case. I don't know whether there are men out there that abuse these women. If we learn about information and evidence that allows us to prosecute them, you better believe we will. But I don't think that the public or you all are going to uncover men within the Epstein files that abuse women, unfortunately.
Well, that really flies in the face of what your current FBI director has been saying.
Put on your big boy pants and let us know who the pedophiles are.
That's right. Kash Patel is keeping his eye on you. As for what the other eye is doing, I couldn't say. But sorry, that clip is from way back in 2023, before Kash worked for Trump, back when he was demanding that our elected officials put on their big boy pants. Here he is more recently.
You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he tracked.
Now this is Kash Patel. He has changed how he responds to these files. Because remember, years before, he was saying, we're going to get this information out. We're going to release it. Now he's changed his tune.
Trafficked to other individuals. And the information we have, again, is limited.
So the answer is no one?
For the information that we have.
Guess they didn't have any big boy pants in Kash's size. But I guess Todd Blanche is right. Unfortunately, we may never uncover the names of men who abuse women. But with today's release, we will uncover names of men who tried to convince the world that they didn't even know who this Epstein guy was. Remember this little nugget from the Ketamine King?
Time to drop the really big bomb. President Trump, at Real Donald Trump, is in the Epstein files.
Well, turns out the man in all black was calling the kettle black because he is also in the files. Here's an email exchange between Musk and Epstein from 2013. We'll be in the BVI, British Virgin Islands / St. Bart's area over the holidays. Is there a good time to visit? And Epstein responds, I will send heli, meaning helicopter, for you. And his email signature says, sorry for the typos. Which means, of all the errors Jeffrey Epstein is willing to apologize for, it's spelling that he lands on. That's like Jeffrey Dahmer apologizing for making a mess in your kitchen. But if you thought that it was just one rich white male from Trump's administration trying to hide his friendship with Epstein, think again. Here's Howard Lutnick recalling a meeting that he had with his then neighbor back in 2005.
He was your neighbor for 10 years. How well did you know him?
All right, so we are in number 11
lives in number 9. We share a wall. Right. So it's in New York City. So he
Wow.
invites us in. We have coffee in this, and he says, "Do you want a tour?" And he opens the door, and there's a massage table in the middle of the room, and candles all around and stuff. So I ask very insightful, cutting questions. I say to him, "Massage table in the middle of your house?"
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. This is like, we got to cover it though. Like the video, please hit subscribe. Please hit subscribe. Hold on.
Knives Out. But sorry to cut you off. Please continue.
And he says, "Every day." And then he gets weirdly close to me. And he says, "And the right kind of massage."
That's
and
cool.
in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again.
You know how after a really big night of drinking, you wake up with a terrible hangover and you say to yourself, "I will never drink again." But then next weekend rolls around and you find yourself totally off the wagon? Well, apparently, that's how Howard Lutnick is with pedophiles. Because in 2012, meaning 7 years after that email, he emailed Epstein so that they could have dinner together with his wife and kids in St. Bart's. When Lutnick said, "I will never be in a room with that disgusting person ever again," what he meant was, ever again, without my wife and children.
Wow.
Even Trump's new pick for the Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, has his name in the Epstein files. At this point, it would probably be easier to start identifying Trump administration officials who somehow weren't implicated in the Epstein files. The sad reality is, closure and justice for Epstein's victims may take much longer than anybody wants, and that is because it is impossible to achieve those things when the people responsible for bringing it are lying at every turn. For some reason, the Trump administration expects the public to trust them when their favorite pastime is lying their fucking asses off. They lie about our electoral process.
It was a rigged election.
They lie about crimes that we witnessed with our own eyes.
An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol officers with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The officers attempted to disarm this individual, but the armed suspect reacted violently.
Even today, when we are being asked to have faith that this administration is telling the truth, Donald Trump cannot help but throw another lie onto the fire.
On the Fed, should the DOJ continue with its investigation into Jay Powell? That seems to be a sticking point for Senator Tellis.
Well, he's got a building that, I build buildings and I build them under budget, ahead of schedule.
I think your big, beautiful ballroom would slightly disagree, considering the original price tag was $200 million, but in December it was updated to $400 million, double the original estimate. How many more lies do we have to endure from this administration before they qualify as completely untrustworthy? Because to me, more than enough. The American people deserve more than having to suffer through endless amounts of disinformation from wealthy white men who frown upon them and the working class, who constantly demean anybody who questions their motives.
I don't understand what that means.
Why am I not surprised?
Like the video.
25 accomplices of Jeffrey Epstein.
Like the video. They're going to talk about the 25 people. Hold on one second. Like the videos, you guys come in. Like the videos, you guys come in.
Touch Network, let's get into this. In a stunning court filing, Ghislaine Maxwell says that there are 25 accomplices of Jeffrey Epstein who entered into secret settlements with plaintiff lawyers, and that there are 4 unnamed co-conspirators who worked for Jeffrey Epstein that were not charged. My name is Dina Dahl with the Midas Touch Network. Let's get into this. Now, as we know, Ghislaine Maxwell is not satisfied with her cushy Club Med situation she is in. She is trying to get out of jail. She tasted a bite of freedom. She realized what Trump was willing to do to perhaps keep her quiet, and wants more of the same. Now, as we know, Ghislaine Maxwell tried to appeal her conviction all the way up to the Supreme Court and lost. Now she's filing a habeas corpus petition, which is the very last resort. It's a post-conviction appeal, which essentially says that all of your appellate issues have been decided because the Supreme Court no longer is going to take your case.
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. Like the videos, you guys come in. Let's continue.
Should be reversed. This is the habeas corpus. Appellate issues have been decided because the Supreme Court no longer is going to take your case. But your conviction is so fundamentally unfair and unconstitutional that it should be reversed. This is the habeas corpus petition. And in that petition, she says that there were 25 of these accomplices of Jeffrey Epstein that entered into secret agreements with plaintiff lawyers. She talks about the fact that the plaintiff's lawyers spoke in Capitol Hill and said that they talked about a list and that they in fact knew the names because of these secret settlements. She also says that 4 employee co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein were not charged. Whether or not this is something that maybe she's ready to talk about, Or is this her way of trying to get Trump to keep her quiet and pardon her? Let's get into it. So she not only talks about these secret settlements, but she also talks specifically about two men that are well known to be associates of both Trump and Epstein. She talks specifically about Leon Black. Now, Leon Black, as we know, entered into a settlement, $62.5 million settlement with the U.S. Virgin Islands. He did not admit guilt, but the lawsuit was about the fact that his financial dealings with Epstein helped fund Jeffrey Epstein's operation. That operation, as we know, was sex trafficking of children. Leon Black already settled into this agreement. She brings this up in her filing. She also talks about Wexner. Now, as we know, Wexner, Victoria's Secret, again, associate of Trump and Epstein. Now, he specifically also has spoken about Trump in sworn testimony. Ian Black, the CEO of Apollo Investment Fund, evidently paid Epstein $170 million. But he says, yes, I paid him that money, but I had no idea about this sex trafficking ring. Despite the fact that Virginia Giuffre talks about how you would just enter into Epstein's home and see nude pictures on the wall, and if you went to the island, you would see nude girls walking around. But supposedly this was for tax and estate planning, $170 million. He also, according to the Daily Beast, testified to Congress in 2018. Congress was investigating whether or not there was Russian interference in the 2016 election. This is, of course, before Epstein died in prison. So in his testimony to Congress, he talks about Trump, being with Trump during a trip to Russia in the naughty 90s, where they attended a concert, a discotheque, and might have been in a strip club together. So you have Trump and Leon Black, according to Leon Black's testimony, being in Russia, going to a strip club, a disco, also around the same time, being friends with Epstein, giving money to Epstein. So Maxwell is calling out by name Leon Black in this filing, perhaps a signal to Trump to pardon her because of what she knows. She also mentions Wexner. As we know, Wexner is the Victoria's Secret Wexner. She says in her filing that Wexner was accused of participating and witnessing abuse, but no settlement with Wexner was revealed. And then she also talks about the fact that no discovery on Leon Black was provided to petitioner. So she's implying there that there was some sort of settlement with Wexner and that there was in fact like a law enforcement investigation, or at least some sort of civil discovery that was obtained about Leon Black that wasn't provided to her. She's trying to argue that her conviction should be overturned because of selective prosecution, because she was prosecuted and not all these other people, and that she wasn't provided the information that was collected about all these other people. 29 other people she's talking about, 25 who entered into settlement, 4 who were co-conspirators. And she says it's selective prosecution and I wasn't given the information to be able to use at trial. Now, whether or not, this is true, or if this is somebody just insinuating something, I mean, if it were true, she would definitely be one to know, is if indeed there were secret settlements, you would think there would be non-disclosure agreements with those secret settlements. Because as we know, again, Virginia Giuffre in her book talks over and over about how she entered into non-disclosure agreements at the same time. That would be very standard legal practice to enter into a non-disclosure agreement as well with the settlement agreement. And that could be perhaps why we are not hearing the names of the list. Because if that person who entered into a non-disclosure agreement says the name, you are breaking that. And the penalty for a non-disclosure agreement, I'm sure, would be massive. And so if there were indeed 25 settlements with non-disclosure agreements, it may not just be fear of retribution, but literally fear of breaking those non-disclosure agreements, and perhaps why you're not just having somebody like Massey read out the names, because if you've obtained that, you don't want to implicate any breach of the non-disclosure agreement. You may not actually know the names. So this is very interesting. It could kind of tie together.
Like the video. There's about 131 in the building. Please hit the subscribe button. Super chats are welcome. Gifteds are welcome. Please hit the subscribe and turn on the notification. Thank you. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Perhaps why nobody has actually just read those names, if they're in fact already settlements, already some non-disclosure agreements. No wonder there's a call to just release the information the Department of Justice already knows, already has about all of these people. Especially, it sounds like, at least according to Ghislaine Maxwell, these unnamed 4 co-conspirators, which sounds like the Department of Justice would have quite a bit of information about already, if indeed they were considered co-conspirators by the Department of Justice. So we'll continue to follow this story here on Midas Touch. Be sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Justice for the victims. Will it come at the hands of Maxwell on her bid to try to get free, or will Trump just give her what she wants? He seems to be doing everything he can to distract us from the Epstein files. Those of us still talking about keeping it in the attention in order to get justice for the victims. Also follow the podcast, the Mistrial Podcast, and to check out our sponsors. So grateful for our sponsors.
Like the video. It's interesting how all this is happening, and that information wasn't even released where a lot of people knew about it then. That's a concern. Like the video. Let's continue fair use reaction clip.
Batch of Jeffrey Epstein files. It's an enormous trove of documents, and it includes references to the richest and most powerful people on the planet. That includes the current president, a former president, cabinet secretaries, a former prime minister, billionaires, and the list goes on and on and on. The Justice Department says tonight that its job is done.
We complied with the statute, we complied with the act, and there is no, we did not protect President Trump, we didn't protect or not protect anybody. I mean, I think that there's a hunger or a thirst for information that I do not think will be satisfied by the review of these documents.
I should note that just because someone is mentioned in these documents does not mean that they've been accused of wrongdoing or did anything wrong. Many of these claims are unverified or they rely on secondhand information. But these are the key findings our team has uncovered so far, and I should note, millions of pages have come out. We are still digging right now in this hour. Donald Trump's name appears thousands of times in these new documents. In some, he's merely mentioned in emails that Jeffrey Epstein sent to other people. But the files also contain a complaint from a woman who accused Trump of raping her in 1994 when she was just 13 years old. According to the FBI document, this accuser, who is identified as Jane Doe, said that Jeffrey Epstein was, quote, angry that Trump was the one to take her virginity and that she was also raped by Jeffrey Epstein. This woman had previously launched lawsuits against Trump and dropped them. The last one happened right before the 2016 election. The president has previously denied these allegations. Also included in today's release was a list of sexual assault allegations related to the president compiled by the FBI in August, many of which appear to have come from unverified tips. We don't know why tonight the FBI made this list, and there are more than a dozen allegations that are included in it. But recall what the president has previously said about these documents, about the Jeffrey Epstein files. He said that they are a hoax and that the release of them could ruin people's reputations.
I know it's a hoax. It's started by Democrats. It's been run by the Democrats for 4 years. You had Christopher Wray and these characters and Comey before him.
I would say that, these files were made up by Comey. They were made up by Obama. They were made up by the Biden. We went through years of that with the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it.
Just to be clear, Christopher Wray was the president's pick for FBI director that he put into that job. This also comes as we're learning for the first time about Jeffrey Epstein's contact with Elon Musk. You may remember Elon Musk dropped what he described as a really big bomb last year, that Trump was in the Epstein files, and that was the real reason that they had not been made public. Well, it turns out, based on what we saw today, Musk is also Epstein files. Emails show that he tried coordinating multiple visits to Jeffrey Epstein's private island. In one from 2013, Elon Musk asked Jeffrey Epstein, when should we head to your island? The year before, he said, what day night would be the wildest party on your island? Now, this is after Musk claimed, in all caps, I should note, last year, that, quote, Epstein tried to get me to go to his island, and I refused. Musk's representatives did not immediately respond to CNN's request for comment for explanation for those emails and that contact. And speaking of distancing and denials, recall what President Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said just last year about a 2005 encounter that he had with Epstein at his Manhattan townhouse.
I say to him, massage table in the middle of your house? How often do you have a massage? And he says, every day. And then he gets weirdly close to me. And he says, and the right kind of massage. And in the 6 or 8 steps it takes to get from his house to my house, my wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again.
Okay, so that was 2005. Files released today show that Howard Lutnick tried to meet or call with Epstein several times after 2005, much longer after. A 2011 email to Jeffrey Epstein from his assistant reads, Howard Lutnick will come see you at 5 p.m. That same year, the heading of an alarm message reads, Drinks with Howard Lutnick.
And Lutnick also emailed Jeffrey Epstein's assistant in 2015, inviting Epstein to a Democratic fundraiser for Hillary Clinton that he was hosting. Asked for comment on these emails and the correspondence between the two, a spokesperson for the Commerce Department told CNN Secretary Lutnick had limited interactions with Mr. Epstein in the presence of his wife. Has never been accused of wrongdoing.
Some of the victims of Epstein have expressed frustration with the entire process. I want to give you the opportunity to speak directly to them.
Well, I don't know what you're speaking to. I mean, if there's frustration with, quote, the entire process, same here. I mean, you have a situation where for many, many years, nobody even breathed a word about Jeffrey Epstein. And then all of a sudden, it was all anybody would talk about. Listen, victims of Mr. Epstein have gone through unspeakable pain. And there's nobody that should say anything differently. I hope that the work that the men and women within this department have done over the past 2 months hopefully is able to bring closure.
And tonight we are hearing directly from Jeffrey Epstein's survivors who are angry, some of them frustrated that their names showed up unredacted in the files that came out today, despite what we heard from the Justice Department about a pledge to prioritize their privacy. More than a dozen of the survivors issued a new joint statement. It reads in part, this latest release of Jeffrey Epstein files is being sold as transparency, but what it actually does is expose survivors. Once again, survivors are having their names and identifying information exposed, while the men who abused us remain hidden and protected. That is outrageous. As survivors, we should never be the ones named, scrutinized, and re-traumatized, while Epstein's enablers continue to benefit from secrecy. This is a betrayal of the very people this process is supposed to serve. One of the Epstein survivors who signed that statement is Jess Michaels, who says she was sexually assaulted by Jeffrey Epstein when she was 22 years old. And Jess joins me now. Thank you for being here on a day like today. We've spoken with many of the survivors on this show before, and I know it's not an easy conversation to have, so I really do appreciate you joining us. When you heard the Deputy Attorney General today talking about closure, is that what you feel after this release?
Firstly, thank you so much, Caitlin, not only for having me on, but for continually having Epstein survivors on so that our voices are heard. There is not a single bit of closure today. I actually brought a little show and tell for you, Caitlin. You know how I heard you speaking with the attorney before this about the 302s, and this is what the only 302 that could be found so far in the files by someone that was combing the files for hours. It was 7 pages, and 4 of them looked like this. So we know that the victim's name is here, right? And that's appropriately redacted. So what is all of this?
Please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the subscribe button. There's about 101 in the building. Please hit subscribe and thank you. We're trying to hit 50K by next month. Please hit subscribe and thank you, and turn on the notifications and thank you. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. A lot of redaction.
So there's no way for me to say to you that there's closure here. This is the exact opposite of transparency.
100,000 supplements in the U.S., 0%.
Like the video, like the video. That's so concerning. The victims should have justice, and it doesn't seem like they're getting it. Sad.
I mean, it must be so frustrating for you to look at that and to see just completely blacked out in the entire page.
And then we've seen pages where they're blacked out, and the only thing not blacked out was a survivor's name. It is such incompetence. It is sloppy. I mean, if any one of us did our jobs the way the DOJ did this job, we wouldn't be working humans. We would lose our job. We would lose our place in a company, because this particular job has been so egregiously done, horrifically done.
If you had been at that press conference today at the Justice Department, what do you think you would have asked?
I would have asked, then what's this? What is missing from this page? Because one of the things that he said was about the fact that there's no list of men, there's no treasure trove of men. Then what is this?
Right.
What is missing here? This is not a survivor's name. There's no survivor's name that is this long. So what I'd like to ask any of them in the Department of Justice is, what is this? This is a victim's statement. The only thing that was supposed to be redacted was her name. So this is clearly protecting someone, something.
The victim's statement is all blacked out, but her name. Crazy work.
Be in there would be, theoretically, and what we've seen with other 302s is that's when they interview someone who has filed a complaint, and that's their account of what happened to them.
Exactly. And so to stand on that podium and say, well, there's no names here, and to hear for months now, there's nothing in this, there's no reason, but then there should be no reason to have a black page. If there's nothing there, then what are you redacting?
Right.
That's what I would have said to him.
Jess Michaels. I'm sorry. I really am, because I'm sure it's frustrating, incredibly frustrating. I don't even know if that puts it even sums up the feeling. But I am grateful that you're willing to come on and share that and let people know how you feel about what came out today.
Thank you for having me.
Jess Michaels, thank you for your time.
Like the video, fair use. Crazy work that's being done, y'all. Crazy work. Like the videos, y'all come in.
Million pages worth related. The US Department of Justice says it's released another tranche of documents, 3 million pages worth, related to the late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The US Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche has been holding a news conference in the last hour and said 2,000 videos and 180,000 images have been released. A small portion of what's known as the Epstein files was released by the DOJ back in December of last year, following a congressional bill signed into law to make the files public within 30 days. However, until now, fewer than 1% of the files on Jeffrey Epstein have been made public. Well, our teams are going through the latest batch that's been released by the Department of Justice, released in the last hour. We'll bring you the latest details in a moment. But let's start this hour hearing from the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche.
I'm here today to talk about the department's compliance with its production obligations under the Act. Around, I think right now, and continuing throughout the day-to-day, as the indexing and uploading completes, we are producing responsive materials under the Act. Today we are producing more than 3 million pages, including more than 2,000 videos and 180,000 images. In total, that means that the department produced approximately 3.5 million pages in compliance with the Act. Just a quick note about the videos and images. The 2,000 videos and 180,000 images are not all videos and images taken by Mr. Epstein or someone around him. They include large quantities of commercial pornography and images that were seized from Epstein's devices, but which he did not take or that someone around him did not take. Some of the videos, though, and some of the images do appear to be taken by Mr. Epstein or by others around him.
I didn't get the job. It's between.
Like the video, fair use. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button. There's about 105 in the building. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
In the last hour, we'll talk to Gary O'Donoghue in a moment, but I'm going to take you to...
Some of the videos, though, and some of the images do appear to be taken by Mr. Epstein or by others around him.
Well, that was Todd Blanche in the last hour. We'll talk to Gary O'Donoghue in a moment, but I'm going to take you to the White House because Donald Trump is having a live event there at the moment talking about a range of issues. I think he's still talking about Iran, so it's a good time to actually just hear a little of what the US President is saying.
And I think it's going to be really exciting. Roger, please. Well, thank you, Mr. President. This is an amazing time for us as a company.
The distractions. They don't want to talk about what's released.
To support the 250th anniversary for the country.
Well, as always, Donald Trump flitting between subjects. We will keep an eye on that. We'll leave it on the screen. So if he talks about Iran again, if he talks about what we've just had at the Department of Justice, or any of the other main stories, we'll return and catch a little of what Trump says to reporters. But let's bring in our Chief North America correspondent, Gary O'Donoghue. And Gary, getting back to that tranche of material that's been released by the DOJ, give me your assessment, first of all, in terms of just the amount of material that's been released.
Well, it's vast. I mean, it's absolutely vast. It's going to take a long time for people to go through it. It's to some degree searchable, but not easily searchable. People will be looking to try and find if there's any new information in there. A lot of these documents will be similar types of documents to the ones we've had before. So things like flight logs on Epstein's plane, photographs. There are videos as well. Interestingly, which I don't think was true before Christmas, you had to sign a waiver to look at these documents, a kind of age-related waiver, which suggests that there may be some material in there that they believe could be, difficult or unsuitable for children to look at. And he did mention in his press conference, Todd Blanche, that that some of the material might be pornographic. We don't know to what degree that would be redacted. Certainly, he's redacted, or they're redacting all the pictures of women in these files, but they've also said there could be mistakes because of the sheer amount of material. And they have this email address where people who feel their images or their material has been released erroneously can kind of email in. So it'll take a long time to assess the nature of this dump. It does comply finally with the a bill that was passed in Congress. It's late, but it does comply. There is a small number of documents that may still be being held back at the moment in the Southern District of New York. That seems to be related to a particular court order there. And I think people will just start trawling through to see if there's anything new. It's worth pointing out that as far as we know, there are no active criminal investigations into others in terms of Epstein, and who's dead, of course, and Ghislaine Maxwell, his co-conspirator who's in prison. We don't know of any other investigations relating to his activities. And in terms of President Trump and other high-profile figures, none of the victims have ever made an accusation against Donald Trump, nor Bill Clinton, indeed, who has featured heavily in some of the previous releases.
Yes, and we heard within that news conference, Todd Blanche say they rejected really, really strongly, the Attorney General and himself, that they don't take child sex trafficking seriously. You mentioned the president at a different stage. He also said, we did not protect Donald Trump in the release of the Epstein files. So cutting to, obviously, some of the accusations that have been made over the years, despite no evidence being put forward.
That's right, and in some of those documents that came out in that big dump, these things happen on Fridays. It happened on the Friday before Christmas. We've got a Friday today, and then the other big one where I was involved was 2 days before Christmas, the day before Christmas Eve. That was the one that contained suggestions by some agents who were investigating Epstein that Donald Trump, the president, had been on Epstein's plane more than had previously been thought back in the 90s. Again, no allegation attaching to that, certainly by the investigators in that document. And also those documents before Christmas indicating that there were others, potential co-conspirators that the Justice Department were looking at, maybe as many as 10, 6 of whom had subpoenas. Now, again, no one's been charged. There's no indication anyone is being investigated actively at this point in time. And to be honest, I mean, it wasn't asked of the Deputy AG during that press conference, as far as I heard, but the obvious question is, while you were reviewing all this stuff for redactions and for publication, were you doing a sort of process of review in terms of whether you should be going after anyone else? That question we haven't had answered as far as I know yet, but all the indications are that they aren't.
See, whether you should be going after anybody else. Like the video, fair use, reaction clip. Yes, they should be going after people.
At this point, he kept saying, if evidence comes to light that anyone should be investigated, prosecuted, then we'll do so.
Yes. Just a brief final thought, Gary. Where do you think then we are with this story? Because certainly for the MAGA base, they have been furious at different stages that the Epstein files weren't released right on day one of this administration and at various stages along the way. In terms of Donald Trump being able to push this out of the headlines, again, where do you think we are?
Yeah, I mean, this has annoyed the base, his core support, incredibly, massively. Not least because of the kind of flip-flop on it, the kind of the gung-ho, we're going to release everything, sort of hinting at conspiracies during the election campaign, then getting cold feet on the whole process, dumping on the idea of this sort of private client list that the base seemed to think there was a secret list of people that Epstein had kept. Justice Department pushed back on that regularly, and again so today. So he will hope that they get part of this. But the point about conspiracies is that they are they're not often susceptible to evidence. They get a hold and they retain a hold, yes. And there's not much you can do with core members of believers to actually dislodge that.
Gary, thanks very much.
Like the video, fair use, reaction clip. Like the video as you guys come in. Thanks for being here. Thanks for hitting the subscribe button. Don't forget, we're trying to hit 50K by next month. Please hit the subscribe button. Let's continue.
More than 180,000 images, some of the material so explicit you have to verify being an adult before you can actually access it.
Many of Epstein's survivors have been publicly pushing for years to have these documents come out, but it took a law passed with near unanimous support in Congress to finally bring these documents to light.
The victims of Mr. Epstein have gone through unspeakable pain, and there's nobody that should say anything differently. And I to the extent that there's frustration, I understand where that comes from, just from what we know about Mr. Epstein. I hope that the work that the men and women within this department have done over the past 2 months hopefully is able to bring closure.
CNN's Evan Perez is here with us now. And Evan, there's been a lot of speculation about President Trump being named in these files. And
how is that bringing closure and you're just releasing documents, but no one's being held accountable? That's crazy work. Like the video, fair use, reaction clip.
We're learning now the FBI actually compiled a list of allegations related to the president back in August. What are you learning?
Right. So this was in 2025 that the FBI compiled a list of all of these sexual assault allegations that involved the president of the United States, that some of them stretch back years, decades, that were associated with this case. And we don't know what of anything is actually credible here. As a matter of fact, we believe that a lot of these could not be verified. Some of them were second and third hand accounts that people were relating things. And that's the way the FBI works, right? Some of this is in 302s, what they call 302s, which are essentially witness statements. And anyone can make any allegations. The FBI takes it down, and then it takes time and effort to try to verify whether any of that stands. And so that appears to what has happened here. And what's notable here is that there's some of them that have very salacious accusations about the president. And again, a lot of them are unverified at all by the FBI. It appears that at least a couple of the documents that we're talking about here have been removed since they were posted earlier by the Justice Department. We don't know why that is. They've done this in previous tranches that they've released. But look, I mean, we know that Jeffrey Epstein and the President of the United States were friends, that they were close friends for a period, and then they had a falling out. The president has described that over the number of years, and he's also said repeatedly that he had nothing to do and did not know anything about about the activities, the illegal activities of Jeffrey Epstein with underage girls. And so that's what's notable. One of the notable things, a lot of these documents, 3.5 million documents in all that have been released in all of the Justice Department's work here. They've had hundreds of lawyers over the last few weeks who've been focused only on this, leaving behind all their other work to try to meet this deadline, which of course they've blown past by a number of weeks. And so we are still going.
And why didn't they put a stop to it soon? How are these young girls able to get in and out of his complex, his building? How is that happening? And they don't arrest him immediately. Crazy work.
Through a lot of these documents. Some of them are things we've seen before, including things related to the Ghislaine Maxwell case. Of course, she was convicted in 2022 for being associated with some of these crimes. And so we're still going through a lot of these documents to see what else we learn in here. There was also some allegations about Bill Clinton. A lot of Bill Clinton actions here, including someone who was his former White House counsel, who makes reference to Jeffrey Epstein. She worked as a lawyer, apparently for Jeffrey Epstein and his estate, and refers to him as Wonderful Jeffrey and things like that. So there's a lot of political figures associated with Epstein, which is not surprising given the company that he kept.
Evan, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate it.
The Justice Department is in the process of releasing its remaining files related to the Jeffrey Epstein sex trafficking case. We're now hearing from some Epstein survivors, though, who say their names appear unredacted throughout the documents, despite assurances directly from DOJ that no personally identifiable information about victims would be released. Joining us now, an attorney who represents 11 of Epstein's accusers, Eric Fudali. Eric, thank you so much for being with us. The documents that were released today include some 3 million pages, 2,000 videos, 180,000 images as well. Is that, to your knowledge, everything DOJ has in its possession?
Absolutely not. No, it's not everything. And even what has been produced still has redactions. There were some very alarming statements from the Department of Justice today discussing what they withheld and what they redacted. And most alarming was they cited attorney-client privilege and ongoing investigations. The problem with that is there's no oversight. We just have to trust that everything they're withholding is, in fact, attorney-client privilege. And attorney-client privilege is very nuanced and very difficult, especially when you're dealing with prosecutors who technically don't really have clients other than the government. So, again, it's very convoluted. Also, ongoing investigations. You could say anything's an ongoing investigation, then withhold. That's what's so frustrating and so alarming about this. And that's why the congressmen have requested some of the federal judges in New York who have overseen the Epstein cases to appoint a special overseer to oversee this production and make sure that it's being done in compliance with the law. We're actually filing some amicus briefs and letters to those judges on behalf of my clients as we speak, because that's what needs to happen. There needs to be oversight.
When you hear that there are survivors out there saying that they have read their names, even Jane Doe's, that they have read their names in these documents, I mean, what does that tell you about the process, the review process, to put these documents out there?
Like the video, There's about 108 in the building. Please hit subscribe and turn on your notification. Continue to hit the like button. Can I get 30 people to double tap that screen and hit the like button, please? Let's get over 100 likes, and thank you. Let's get over 100 likes. This is crazy work.
Cover up, but on the other hand, it's incompetence. So you have this.
I'm gonna rewind it a little bit.
In these documents, I mean, what does that tell you about the process, the review process, to put these documents out there?
It's really concerning, and really what's so baffling about this is, on one hand, it's a cover up. But on the other hand, it's incompetence. So you have this combination, this sort of like perfect storm of it trying to cover up what they don't want people to see, but then accidentally covering up what they shouldn't allow people to see, or accidentally showing people what they shouldn't see. I mean, this is just, I don't know if I've ever seen in the history of this Epstein case, or really anything, such sheer incompetence and such an obvious and robust effort to cover things up and withhold things from the public. But the fact that after all these redactions, all this time, we're almost a month and a half past the deadline for which all the documents were supposed to be produced, that they're still producing documents that are not fully redacted. I saw that I heard there's a driver's license that showed a survivor's name. I mean, it's just,
that's crazy.
It's incomprehensible how poor a job and how this has been handled.
I can predict what your response is going to be based on your description of this as a cover-up and your description of the entire process, but I do have to ask whether you believe Deputy Attorney General Blanche when he says that the White House had no purview, no control, no influence whatsoever on this review.
I have difficulty that for a couple of reasons. First, it would seem like this administration has been the only people in the entire country who don't want the Epstein files revealed. I mean, this was a bipartisan issue in Congress, in the House, in the Senate. Republicans, Democrats, countrywide all want the Epstein files released. So something has to be stopping it, because remember, the Department of Justice didn't need a law to release them. They could have just released them. So something was stopping them. And certainly it wasn't the will of the public, because the public wants these released. Certainly it wasn't Congress or the Senate, because they want this released. So there has to be another entity that wanted these files not released. And the logical conclusion is that this administration is the one who has been blocking the release, and appears perhaps to continue to be blocking this release.
Eric Fudali, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
Like the video, fair use, reaction clip.
Joining us now, MS Now's Fallon Gallagher, Peter Baker, Chief White House Correspondent for the New York Times, and an MS Now contributor, and Dave Ehrenberg, former state attorney for Palm Beach County. Fallon, let's start with you. What else did we hear from Blanche? And I know we're still combing through this trove of documents.
Yeah, Ariel, we learned a significant amount of information during this press conference, but the biggest headline is that the Department of Justice believes that they have met their obligation and that their work is complete under the Epstein Transparency Act, that this new drop of 3 million documents is everything that they feel that they need to deliver. Now, there is one caveat. They said that there could be a small amount of documents that we could get. They are working with the Southern District of New York, asking a judge to unseal the grand jury material related to the 2019 investigation and eventual indictment against Ghislaine Maxwell. But there are a number of headlines here. The biggest thing is that Todd Blanche is saying that there is no super secret tranche of additional documents, that this is everything. They said that any claims that the DOJ is working to protect the president is not true. We know that in this new trove of documents, which we are still reviewing, there are a number of them, is that they have decided to redact every single woman. This is a departure from something that we saw in the first trove of documents. There were women who were apparently not victims, who were not redacted. They then, you'll remember, there were some mistakes. They had to go back and remove some documents because they needed to redact them, because there were concerns that they were releasing identities of victims. So this time they've decided to just redact everybody. And the one really notable thing there is that they are also redacting men if the men's presence in a photo or a video or anything otherwise makes it impossible to redact the identity of the woman. And so there is a possibility that we could see some men redacted in this new drop. But we also know that Todd Blanche is saying that there are probably not any new men who would be convicted of wrongdoing here, and that if they do discover any, they would, of course, prosecute them. But again, we are still going through these documents. It is a very large volume of documents, 3 million. This will take our team some time, but as soon as we have anything reportable, we'll bring it right to you. Ariel?
Thanks so much, Fallon. I know you'll stick around for that. Elisa, we now have our senior legal reporter, Lisa Rubin, with us. Lisa, Blanche was adamant, as Fallon mentioned, that the DOJ is not protecting President Trump. I don't know if we have the sound that we can play there of him talking about this.
Like the video, fair use, reaction clip. There's about 100.
In the meantime, it was.
There's about 119 in the building. Please hit subscribe. Why aren't they going to be investigated and justice for the victims? Just releasing the names, okay, but more should be done. This is crazy work.
And that if they do discover any, they would, of course, prosecute them. But again, we are still going through these documents. It is a very large volume of documents, 3 million. This will take our team some time, but as soon as we have anything reportable, we'll bring it right to you. Ariel?
Thanks so much, Fallon. I know you'll stick around for that. Elisa, we now have our senior legal reporter, Lisa Rubin, with us. Lisa, Blanche was adamant, as Fallon mentioned, that the DOJ is not protecting President Trump. I don't know if we have the sound that we can play there of him talking about this.
Please hit the subscribe button, you guys. There's about 114 in the building. It's Saturday. I'm working hard bringing you guys this video. Please hit subscribe. All 114. Please hit subscribe. If you already hit subscribe, press 1. If you not yet hit subscribe, press 2. If you already hit subscribe, press 1. If you already hit subscribe, if you already hit subscribe, press 1. If you did not, press 2. Please hit subscribe and thank you. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. They're waiting on the clip.
It was
okay. We have it. Anybody? I mean, I think that there's a hunger or a thirst for information that I do not think will be satisfied by the review of these documents.
Like the video. Let's let the commercial go past. Yes, please hit subscribe, and thank you. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
So essentially alluding to the fact that no matter what's released at this point, it's not going to satiate those out there that just want to see names, they want to see photos, they want to see all of this. What do you make of Blanche's comments, specifically when it comes to the president and what we may or may not see here?
I don't think that's a fair comment, and I'm going to try and be measured in my words, Ariel, because as I was discussing during our last hour with Ana Cabrera, the The very existence of the Epstein Files Transparency Act is a product of a reversal by the Department of Justice. Trump came into office aligned with a whole movement of people that believed that there was a massive conspiracy around Jeffrey Epstein and the suppression of evidence and information about his sex trafficking ring. And they encouraged those voices. They told those voices that they would be listened to, and they promised that files related to Jeffrey Epstein would be released. And indeed, when they came into office, they initiated a process of reviewing these documents. They brought in people from the FBI and people from the National Security Division at the Department of Justice. We know this because multiple publications reported on this rampantly throughout the spring. And then sometime in or around May, Deputy Attorney General Blanche and others told the president about instances in which his name had come up and those of people close to him had come up. And somehow that resulted in a memo unsigned in July of last year where the FBI and the Department of Justice essentially told us there's nothing more to see here. We don't believe it's in the public interest for us to release anymore. Somehow in Mr. Blanche's mind, that's transmogrified into a we were legally not able to release anymore until the Epstein Files Transparency Act was put into place. That's also not true. They did need judicial permission to release some small modicum of what we're going to see, things that were grand jury materials or otherwise produced in discovery in the 2 criminal cases. But other than that, this is a situation largely of this administration's own making and a miscalculation politically by them of the hunger that they themselves stoked for more information about Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and the sex trafficking ring.
I did find that relatively notable that Blanche seemed almost annoyed that this topic had come to the forefront during this press conference and when he was pressed on it, and that it, just like you're saying, this came from members of the president's own orbit, from podcasters and the like.
Yeah, his peak was particularly upsetting to watch because it came out in response to a question about the survivors' frustration. And Mr. Blanche seemed to say, I am just as frustrated as they are, almost justifying that he was more frustrated with more of a right to be frustrated. He is not equally situated here. I appreciate that professionally, this must have been quite an ordeal for him and others at the Department of Justice. And I also appreciate his point that there are some conflicting goals embedded in the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Produce them immediately and also ensure that all victim identifying information is redacted. Those are 2 things that are hard to meet at the same time. And yet, he is not similarly situated to the survivors. Their request for justice, their demand for information is one that he could have accommodated much earlier and without a congressional enactment.
Okay, so Dave, speaking of the survivors, Blanche made it clear that there were redactions here, as Fallon reported. There were redactions of women who may have been survivors, victims of Jeffrey Epstein, other than Ghislaine Maxwell. She will appear in some of these documents. No images of men will be shown that would otherwise compromise the survivors, but no images of men will also be redacted in the release here. What do you make of all of this and how the DOJ is handling it?
The big question for a lot of people is, where are the co-conspirators? Those names are the ones that everyone wants. And until we get those names, people are going to be dissatisfied. Remember, we were supposed to get an Epstein client list. There was never an Epstein client list, but there are names of co-conspirators in the files. Will we see those? So far, we have seen all those names redacted, except for Jean-Luc Brunel, who died of suicide. Who we all know started and convicted, so you can release her name. And Leslie Wexner. And we don't know why Leslie Wexner's name was unredacted while all the other alleged co-conspirators were redacted. So there seems to be, up to this point, no rhyme or reason why some names are there, others are not, why some pages are entirely redacted, all black all over the pages, while some are just pinpoint redaction.
And we already heard that some of those are witness statements. So as we're hearing some of his third parties, some of the witness statements have been redacted. Like the video, that's concerning. It seems like they did that on purpose.
So hopefully we can have a more consistent approach now.
Are you surprised that there are 6 million documents that are just now coming into focus? The DOJ has acted surprised that they're just now discovering this tranche of documents?
Yes, I wonder about the organization of all this. Remember, they heard 1 million plus documents that came from the Southern District of New York that were supposed to be transferred over to Main Justice. So, these are all questions out there. And that's why we're right to ask Todd Blanche and others, why the slow roll? Are they trying to cover something up? And now he's out there saying, absolutely not. We're not trying to protect them.
But why would the witness statements be redacted? Those witness statements will give a lot of information of what happened and what transpired. Like the video, fair use reaction clip. Please hit the subscribe button, you guys. There's about 119 in the building. If all 119 subscribe, that'll be a great day for me. We're trying to hit 50K by next month.
Boss here, we're just going to be releasing them as soon as we're practically able to because they have manpower issues. But you can see why people are not giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Peter, Blanche said any member of Congress who has issues with what they're going to see today can take these unredacted files and go to the Department of Justice and ask questions, can get more information. What will you be watching for as far as how lawmakers approach what they see from the DOJ at this point?
Well, we'll see if any of them actually take them up on that. I've seen a number of occasions where members of Congress have been asked or offered the opportunity to look at documents, and then they don't actually take it up. They'd rather just talk about it without doing their homework. But what's fascinating here, as David was just talking about, was the sort of the mistrust, I think, of this Justice Department and this administration on this issue, because, in fact, as Lisa said, they could have done this a lot earlier. You have these people, including the President of the United States, who have fomented the idea that there was something here, a conspiracy, until they got into office, and suddenly
We're almost at 100 likes. Can I get 15 people to please double tap that screen to get the likes up? Let's get the likes up for 100, please, so we can continue. Let's get 15 people to double tap that screen to get the likes up. 15 people, double tap the screen, please, and thank you. Let's get the likes up. Let's be over 100. Thank you.
They were the ones responsible for it. Todd Blanche said that just now that they had originally identified 6 million documents for this release, and then decided really it's only 3 million. That the 6 million was an example of over collecting, and he decided that they've decided that really only 3 million are actually responsive to the law that Congress passed. Okay, that may be the case. We don't know because we're not in there. But let me ask you this: what would Donald Trump, who was not president, say about that? What he would say about that is, aha, there's something in secret in those 3 million pages they're not releasing. You know he would, because that's the kind of thing he often did. And now he's on the other side of that equation, asking people to trust him when he would not have trusted Justice Department had he not been president.
Peter, what do you make of the fact that Blanche is the face of this and Pam Bondi is nowhere to be seen at this moment?
Yeah, fascinating, right? She was not the one there taking questions today. Obviously, that indicates some sort of, continuing friction with her from the White House. They have not been happy with the way she's handled this. The president does trust Todd Blanche. Todd Blanche, of course, had been his personal attorney. And that's why when Todd Blanche says, the White House has nothing to do with this, it's a little hard, because, in fact, he is somebody who literally worked for Donald Trump as his personal lawyer, and was installed as a deputy attorney general because the president wanted somebody who was loyal in there. And so whether or not the White House was directly involved in the specific redactions or the specific decision-making about this, President Trump knew he had somebody in Todd Blanche as the deputy attorney general that he trusted. And that's why I think a lot of people out there who are looking for, a neutral handling of this are not satisfied.
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. How it's being handled, are you guys satisfied? How it's being released, are you satisfied? Like the video as you guys come in. Like the video as you guys come in. Fair use reaction clip.
Million pages of documents from the Epstein files, which seems like a lot of documents, but it's reportedly only half of what the Justice Department actually has.
Donald Trump, Department of Justice, just made it clear right now that they intend to withhold approximately 50% or half of the Epstein files, while claiming to have fully complied with the law. This is outrageous and incredibly concerning. Now, the Oversight Committee subpoena, which we have had in place now since the summer, had directed the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and...
Let's get the likes over 100, you guys. Please double tap the screen so we can continue. Let's get the likes to 100. Double tap the screen, please. Double tap the screen. Hit the thumbs up above the video, below the video. Let's get the likes over 100. Do you agree with how this is being released? Don't agree? Why are they wanting to withhold other information? Let's get the likes to 100. Double tap the screen, please. Thank you. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
The Department of Justice to release all the files to our committee, of course, while also protecting our survivors. They are now in violation of that law.
When you really think about it, that's kind of disgusting that there's that much information that they've already released, and that there's that much information that they're withholding. That's a lot of information against these people.
Now, the two lawmakers who worked tirelessly with survivors to pass that Epstein Files Transparency Act, the Democrat Ro Khanna and the Republican Thomas Massie, sent this letter to Todd Blanche tonight, the Deputy Attorney General, with demands for the specific material that they say the Trump DOJ has refused to release. Quote, as the bipartisan lead sponsors of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, we write to formally request access to unredacted documents of the Jeffrey Epstein files, given ongoing reported concerns regarding the scope and consistency of redactions in the documents released to date. We respectfully request a meeting to review the unredacted records. In particular, we seek access to the following categories of materials. First, hundreds of thousands of pages of emails and other documents recovered from Jeffrey Epstein's email account during the 2018 and 2019 investigations into Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Secondly, victim interview statements from the initial Florida investigation and subsequent investigations in New York. We understand that the department possesses FBI Form 302 reports documenting these interviews. However, the materials released to date in this category consist largely of pages that are fully redacted, providing no meaningful information for oversight or public accountability. Third, the 53-page draft indictment and the 82-page prosecution memorandum prepared during the 2007 Florida investigation. These documents are essential to understanding the government's knowledge of Epstein's criminal conduct and the circumstances surrounding the non-prosecution agreement and immunity that he received. End quote. All right, joining us now to make sense of this all is MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin. Lisa, I want to start by saying that the Attorney General, formerly Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, says you got everything. All you don't have is stuff that was redacted because of protection of the identity of victims.
Yes, and he also said earlier today that one of the things that the Department of Justice had withheld entirely were things that had privileges attached to them. Things including attorney-client privilege, work product protection, and something known as deliberative process privilege. Put in layman's terms, that means internal deliberations of the Department of Justice. He also said during a point in his press conference that in addition to the 3 million documents that they dumped on us today, oh, guess what? There are another 3 million of them that they didn't produce. Right. So not everything that they withheld was for the privacy and safety of victims. In fact, we know that, Allie, because one of the things that characterizes their production today is a sort of rampant sloppiness with respect to actually protecting that information. And to that end, if I can, I'd like to read a statement that I received tonight from the victim's lawyer. I noticed...
We're almost at 100 likes. 10 more people to hit the like button, please. 10 more people to hit the like button. Can I get 60 more people to hit the subscribe button? We're almost at our quota for today. 60 more people to hit the subscribe button. We have 102 people in the building. Please hit the subscribe button. We're almost at our quota for 60 people hitting the subscribe button. Let's continue fair use reaction clip.
I counted almost 20 names that I personally recognized just in the cursory review that I've done so far. I also saw the driver's license of a particular victim that I recognized with her face and her name fully visible. That is contrary to the promises that Deputy Attorney General Blanche made today. So I contacted a lawyer and I asked what her thoughts were on this. And this is the statement I got from Brittany Henderson, who is the partner of Brad Edwards. Together, they represent quite a large assortment of Epstein survivors. She wrote, "What the Department of Justice has done today is devastating and disgusting. Through this final release of documents, the department has flagrantly violated the trust, privacy, and the rights of more victims than perhaps ever before. The department has been in possession of a comprehensive list of victims of Jeffrey Epstein for months. In that time, they have spoken with several terrified women who they promised to protect through a fulsome redaction process. Their complete and utter failure to do so is heartbreaking. There are not words to express the disappointment." And again, that's a statement attributable to Brittany Henderson, one of the lawyers who represents some of the most outspoken Epstein survivors who have advocated for not only the passage of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, but have repeatedly pressed for compliance with the act, compliance that we really didn't see today in a variety of ways.
And by the way, this idea of protecting the survivors is important across the law as a legal principle. But in this particular case, these are survivors who are saying that there are some remarkably wealthy and powerful people who might be implicated in this thing. For them to inadvertently have their names, some of them have gone public, but for them to willy-nilly have their names out there, it's a substantial threat. It's not an abstraction.
No, it's not an abstraction at all. And I read today, you read from that letter from Congressman Khanna and Massey, where they're asking for the department to produce what are called FBI 302s. That is the form that the FBI types up victim statements into. And they are right, there aren't a lot of them there. But which ones are there? I saw one today where at the very end of it, this was from a 2021 interview of a survivor. The last thing she said was, "Ghislaine Maxwell is sociopathic, and I fear for myself if she is not convicted." So there are legitimate fears on behalf of many of these survivors, not just about the people we do know about, but with respect to others that we don't as well.
Help me out with the stuff that we've heard from Robert Garcia and from Thomas Massey and from Ro Khanna about what's not there. How do they know what's not there?
Well, I think there are ways to search this, right? So DOJ was compelled by law not only to produce to the public, but to do so in a way that was text searchable to all of us. So you can enter lots of words in this search and come up with documents. If you're looking, for example, for that prosecution memo or that draft indictment, two of the things that are most important to Massey and Khanna, and frankly to me as well, you can see whether they are there if they come up in a search. One of the ways also that I knew that they were so sloppy with their redactions is because I looked for the names of particular victims and I found them. So it's not that we've done a thorough boil the ocean review of the 3 million pages we've seen so far, but that there are ways of searching these documents. And of course, there are lots of people looking at them. If you look at Twitter today, the assortment of various media outlets that are looking at these and collectively sort of finding bits and pieces here and there, you can compose sort of an aggregate picture, at least initially, of what people consider to be the hottest documents and also the most egregious absences.
So where are we now? Because Todd Blanche has basically said, he stated reasons why, but he said this is, we fulfilled our requirements under the Transparency Act. Ro Khanna, Thomas Massey, Robert Garcia say otherwise. what happens now? We saw the letter that Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie have written to Todd Blanche, but what happens here? Because Todd Blanche has said he wasn't equivocating about this. He said you largely got what you're going to get.
Well, there are two things. One is they haven't gotten everything that they're entitled to because under the law, they have a legal obligation, they meaning the Department of Justice, to produce a report within 15 days to Congress that talks about the categories of documents that have been withheld, the categories of redactions, the reasons they've redacted documents, and they're also supposed to provide a list of all significant people that appear in it, including government officials. So that information still needs to be delivered to Congress. With respect to what comes next, though, I think what you're driving at is what remedy is there for Congress to the extent that there has been a lack of compliance here. And here's where I wish that Robert Garcia and Ro Khanna were with us right now, because I put that question to them. Where I read the law, I don't see a legal remedy for Congress to sue, for example, for better compliance with the Epstein Act.
So notwithstanding the fact that Congress overwhelmingly voted for this Epstein Act, the power of a bipartisan unified Congress isn't enough to overcome the Department of Justice not doing what you evaluate they're supposed to have been doing?
Well, I mean, I think one of the questions is, does Congress want to hold anybody in contempt for failure to comply? They could refer somebody to, guess what, the same Department of Justice that they're accusing of noncompliance. But from a legal perspective, let's say they wanted to bring a lawsuit. One of the challenges is this really fundamental legal concept called standing. It's who has the ability to sue. And over again, courts have found that individual members of Congress, even sometimes whole committees, don't have the right to stand in the shoes of the entire Congress to sue, to vindicate rights that belong to them as an institution. So unless the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader of the Senate want to convene some sort of resolution where both bodies vote to sue, there likely would not be standing, which is one of the most elemental things you need to sustain a lawsuit in the first place.
Like the video, fair use reaction clip. Are you guys happy of what has been released? Like the video as you guys come in. Like the video as you guys come in. And are they not wanting to release the rest of it? Do they want that to trend? When you really think about it, do they want that the trend that they're saying you're only going to get this?
More than 3 million additional pages of Jeffrey Epstein files. The DOJ has claimed that it has met its obligation, finito, in releasing all of the files in its possession.
Crazy.
It's legally mandated by Congress. Congressional Democrats were quick to disagree, with some pointing to the 6 million pages Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said the DOJ had identified as, quote, potentially responsive to the law during its collection efforts, but only releasing half that number. Here's what the top Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, Robert Garcia, had to say. They made it pretty clear, the DOJ, that they're done releasing files. It's only about 50% of what they have in their possession. So
only 50%. That's a lot of information still needs to be released. That's even crazy work, that they're too lazy to release the rest of it. It's almost like they don't want to release the rest of it. They're being lazy. This is it. We're moving forward. Crazy work.
Half of the files in their possession, they're choosing to not release. This continues to be a major White House.
Okay, everyone, there's several things I have to take care of. I was supposed to be gone at 11. I've been live for almost 3 hours and 20 minutes. Please like the video. Please like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. There is about 69 people still in the building. If all 69 people subscribe, I will meet my quota for today. So please hit the subscribe button. For the replay game, continue to hit the like button. For the replay game, continue to subscribe. We are trying to hit 50K by next month. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. I hope I've given you guys all the information for the weekend so you guys know what's going on. I'm wondering if Congress is going to meet in regards to the rest of the information being released. I wonder why they feel they should be over it and not release the rest of the stuff. This is crazy work. And do the victims feel like there's justice here? Just releasing information is one thing, but putting these people behind bars is another thing. Copyright disclaimer: under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarships and research. Fair use is used permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All comments are alleged in our opinion and for entertainment purposes only. Are you guys satisfied with what's been released? That's a lot of information when you think about it. How twisted this person was. And then Maxwell is trying to get out of jail. People should have been in jail alongside of Epstein. People should have been in jail alongside of Maxwell, period. This is crazy work. Other countries are looking at us, laughing at us. Why aren't victims protected? And if we don't know, there might be another undercover Epstein that's out there that's doing the same crazy thing for these high-profile people. Crazy work. Protect your children, protect your daughters, protect your nephews, talk to children young. Make sure there's a no-touch zone, and that's talked about. This is crazy work, crazy work. Thanks for being here, everyone. Have a great weekend. I hope you guys appreciate it. I was only going to go live for an hour. I've been live for 3 hours. I was going to go live for 1 hour. So I appreciate you all. Thank you for getting me back into the algorithm. My algorithm has been acting up for 2 weeks. Thank you for getting me back into the algorithm today. Everyone have a happy Saturday. Talk to your young nieces. Talk to your daughters. These children and victims should be protected. This is crazy work that this has happened, that these young girls weren't protected then, that this happened for years. Disgusting. How was this happening for years? And none of these men wanted to protect and be a whistleblower. This happened for years. Disgusting. Thanks for being here, everyone. Goodbye. Have a great weekend. Disgusting.